Hello everyone. Welcome to another part of what issei was in love with Azathoth. If you enjoy, please like, subscribe and share. It helps motivate me to make more. I did not write this story. The writer is Akuma Kami64. Please go and support them. Now let's dive in. Gaktha dutifully, silently observed the meeting between her king and the two mortals. She did not eavesdrop, for it was not her place or business to interfere with matters of her mistress's lover. She only observed, to ensure that nothing happened to trouble him. Of course, she wasn't the only one observing. There were no less than 23 entities watching on as well. Should she point that out to her new master? She wasn't sure. The great sultana had not left very specific instructions beyond, protect issei while I'm away. She accepted the sacred duty, of course, but she didn't even know how powerful this issei Hayadu was yet. Was he already aware of those that were watching him, or was he still too human to sense such things? Her eyes narrowed. 24 entities. Her doll-like eyes shifted to the left, her head more snapping than turning as she laid eyes on the newcomer. Deceptively human, but definitely not a mortal. Well, I was hoping I'd find one of you about, the blond man greeted with a smirk. What is your purpose here? Gaktha asked coldly, her powers rippling beneath this suit of skin. Relax. I wanted to talk with you. My name is Azazel, he greeted, giving an easygoing look while holding his hands up in surrender. Gaktha paused before retracting her eldritch nature. That name means nothing to me. I'm not even surprised, Azazel remarked in amusement. You wish to speak with me? Why? Gaktha questioned with a frown. Well, finding the cults takes time, so I was hoping you might be one I could use to send a message with, he explained. Ah, now Gaktha understood. He didn't wish to speak with her, but through her. A clever being this was. You have words for my mistress? Well, I'm hoping it reaches a bit above her station, Azazel said meaningfully. Gaktha didn't react. There was no station above her mistress. She would find the notion insulting, but she sensed there was some misassumption in the air. What are your words? I understand that some rogue fallen angels caused some. Azazel paused to consider his words very carefully. Annoyance for your queen. This being thought she was servant to some other eldritch god. She supposed that was expected. The great center had few direct servants on this rock. Yes, they did. I'm the leader of the fallen angels, Azazel explained, pausing to appreciate the fact that he wasn't already attacked. I'd like to make it clear to her that I and my people had nothing to do with that, and apologize on behalf of my wayward subordinates. Gaktha was impressed. This one was brave enough to believe he had the ire of the Queen of the Eldritch and not be petrified by utter terror. Many terrestrials opted for suicide just from the idea of it. I will transfer your sentiments to my mistress. I appreciate that, Azazel said with a nod as he took a careful step back, preparing to leave as he turned around. He wasn't that surprised to see her standing right in front of him, but he was certainly on edge now. 25, she stated in an emotionless voice. I'm sorry. Azazel asked, resisting every urge to fly away as fast as he could. 25, what? There were 23 observing this area, Gaktha answered. You were 24. Now there is 25. Azazel blinked, realizing she wasn't staring at him, exactly. Oh, you mean the creep following me, he asked, glancing over his shoulder at the empty space. Is he not with you? Not to my awareness, Gaktha stated with a head tilt. Reveal yourself. Now. A long sigh came out as the air rippled to reveal a bird, a very large, almost humanoid bird. It was blue and lanky, and had a cage strapped to its back. Well, it answered in a surprisingly normal voice. I'm embarrassed a terrestrial could sense me. I may not be an eldritch, but I'm hardly a pushover, Azazel said confidently. And you are no god, eldritch or otherwise. I never claimed to be divine, sir, the avian retorted in a remarkably gentlemanly manner. I do apologize for intruding on your work, good gazer, it answered, looking to Gaktha with a brief bow of the head. You are the collector, Gaktha recognized with a raised eyebrow. Collector? Azazel repeated with a scowl, eyeing the eldritch bird suspiciously. Collector of what? Thuft, if you please, Lord of the Fallen, Thuft introduced civilly. And I am a collector of all things. And several of my patrons have requested I collect several specimens from this world, and those worlds connected to it. In case, as you might know, they came to an untimely and abrupt end. Azazel didn't know if it was comforting or terrifying to imagine the last members of the fallen angels could end up in an eldritch version of a zoo, or as pets to some god from beyond the stars. Still, there was a more immediate concern. "And you were going to collect me?" he questioned with narrowed eyes. "Oh, good mist, no," Thuft assured with a good-natured smile on his beak. "I was merely following you so that I might find some members that would be less important and less problematic in collecting." "That's honest, I suppose," Azazel stated with some unease. "And why should I let you get away with trying to collect my subordinates?" Thuft took a step forward, bending his neck down to be more at eye level with the fallen angel. "You have subordinates that have fallen out of line, correct? Surely those fools were not the only ones that were problematic," he suggested enticingly. Offering his internal enemies over to the Eldritch, there were fallen Azazel really didn't like, but he wasn't sure he'd go that far just to get rid of them. Then again, "And what do I get out of making your job easier?" "Enough," Gaktha interrupted sternly, a small but terrifying scowl on her face. "Do your business elsewhere, both of you." "As you desire, priestess," Thuft answered instantly, bowing his head once more before turning to Azazel. "I shall speak with you soon, Lord of the Fallen. But I shall refrain from collecting your kind until we settle our discussion." "Your kind," Azazel noted even as he nodded. He wondered, just what had Thuft collected already from Earth? Regardless, the collector vanished with a flap of his mighty wings, leaving only a brief gust and a trail of blue feathers. "Well, that was interesting," Azazel mused, glancing back at Gaktha before he made to leave again. Thankfully, the eldritch female didn't appear before him again, allowing him to walk on. He briefly contemplated asking her what her name or title might be, but decided against it. After all, that could invite more trouble. Besides, he had to deal with this collector and decide if he should warn any of the other factions about him. Gaktha watched the fallen leave dispassionately. While her eyes had been on the conversation between the two interlopers, her true gaze had been on the Allmother's king. And he was leaving. Which meant she was leaving too. 22. Meanwhile, Kaneko was not okay. But she wondered, staring into her reflection, was she even Kaneko still? Kaneko hadn't been fearless, not really, but she definitely didn't have panic attacks on a daily basis. She had been calling in sick from school, hiding in the clubhouse so that she didn't have to be anywhere near her. The Eldritch Queen. Her eyes dilated as something moved in the mirror, something slithering just out from behind her head. Her hand snapped up, trying to grasp it, but met only her own scalp and hair. She turned all about, scanning the empty room like it was the lair of some terrible enemy, but found nothing and no one was here. Kaneko calmed her breathing, not realizing how labored it had become. She was fine, she was safe. Nothing was going to hurt her. Nothing wanted to hurt her. She grimaced, pain registering. She looked down at her hand and frowned, finding that her claws had formed on instinct. They were covered in her own blood. She looked back in the mirror and saw that blood was staining her white hair and clean uniform. If she were human, it'd be a very alarming amount of blood. As a Nico-turned-devil, it was mostly just a mess. Kaneko wouldn't have hurt herself like that. She was a rook of Rias Gremory, she wouldn't have hit herself enough to overcome her own durability. So, who was she now then? Had Kaneko died that day, and she was just whatever was left? Her shoulder was getting wet and cold. She should clean up and change. Rias and the others had enough problems to worry about, she didn't need to scare them with this. As she headed to the shower, her mind returned to her own hollow assurances. After all, it wasn't really about wanting to hurt her. The Eldritch Queen had nearly destroyed her mind just by flexing her horrible powers with Kaneko in the area. There was no ill intent, no desire to make her suffer, she had just been collateral. Nothing more than a casualty in a splash zone of insanity. She blinked, savoring the warmth as the water rolled over her body, steam filling her nostrils. When had she gotten in the shower, or even stripped down? She was truly having problems, to black out like that. The letter from Madame E, if that letter had ever really existed, said this would fade away and that'd she be fine by the end of the month. Could she make it that long? Dealing with these horrible episodes of dread and seeing things? More importantly, who was Madame E? And why had she helped her at all? The Eldritch, to Kaneko's understanding, were apathetic to those caught in the wake of their terrible powers. Maybe she was just cleaning up for the Queen, maybe the Eldritch kept relationships with the supernatural as smooth as possible for their own convenience. She was curious to know, but curiosity killed the cat. Kaneko or not, she was still a Nico. And death might be the kindest fate if she imposed on whoever had tried to help her. As she kneaded the self-inflicted wounds, she never noticed the concerned gaze of Aquino, peering from just around the door, glancing to the blood-stained uniform on the ground. Meanwhile, huh? Aza? You're back early, Issei said in surprise as Aza literally tore herself through one of Yog's portals. Issei. Good, you're here. And she hasn't shown up yet. Aza said quickly, her tongue turning into some kind of snake from how fast she was talking. I told you, he's fine. You knew he was fine. This wasn't that kind of emergency, Yog said with a sigh as she used her sword to close the ruined tear in spacetime. You know how much trouble Shesh can be. Aza protested, her tongue emerging to hiss at the time goddess. Easy, easy. Issei said, some strange instinct causing him to grab Aza's serpent of a tongue. Said girlfriend of his suddenly went stiff and actually seemed to melt a bit at his touch. Was the snake purring? Yes, it was purring. Okay, Aza, calm down. Who is she, and why are you so freaked out? Issei released her tongue, giving her a chance to retract it and morph it back into a normal tongue. Yog, meanwhile, sighed as she finished closing the portal. I just reminded her that you're now a stepfather, Yog explained, equally amused as she was exasperated. Issei was surprised, slowly turning to Aza again. You have a kid? Well, I actually have 3, but it's just the one you have to worry about, Aza assured sheepishly. I'm not sure why I'm even surprised. Guess I just didn't get MILF vibes from you, Issei mused as he cupped his chin. So, this a miracle birth kind of thing, or do I have to worry about an eldritch ex-boyfriend? No, she was a virgin before you, Yog assured in amusement. But yeah, Nyarlathotep is, well, a handful. Also technically my aunt. Issei opened his mouth and closed it. I'm going to need to see a picture of this family tree someday, before I start adding to it at least, he stated idly. So, what's so bad about Nyarat, can I just call her Nyarli? Yes, we all do, Aza answered with a wave. Anyway, how should I put this? You know how most eldritch gods are above the petty concepts of good and evil? Yes, you guys run on a very weird orange-blue morality, Issei answered with a raised eyebrow. Yeah, Nyarli isn't that, Yog explained, extending her sword to lean on it like a staff. She's actually really malicious. As in kick babies and eat kittens kind of malicious. Some of us end a world by accident, but it's never an accident with Nyarli. She really likes tormenting mortals, Aza explained bluntly. Issei suddenly became very alarmed. Wait, are you saying she'd? No. Aza spoke up quickly. She wouldn't harm you, or your family. She knows I won't let her. I made that very clear to her during your past lives. Ah, how I savored the moment when you put your figurative foot down on her. The look was priceless, Yog said, pulling a photograph out of thin air, smirking at the contents. Yog, don't provoke her, Aza muttered with a sigh. Issei stared for a moment as he tried to process several things at once. I'm just going to file most of that away for later. But okay, if she's not coming after me or my parents. She has an entire planet and the connected supernatural worlds filled with various creatures to amuse herself with, Yog said plainly. She'll be bound to cause some trouble somewhere, like she always does. And just because she won't hurt you outright doesn't mean she won't find a way to fuck with you. Aza, I don't want to question your parenting or anything. Issei said carefully. Oh no, you should definitely question my parenting, Aza said with a sigh, running a hand through her hair, her fingers seeping into a stray tentacle and morphing it back into strands of hair. Issei looked taken back by that as Aza slumped, glancing to Yog for some hint at how he should take that one. She held up a scroll, opening it to reveal one sentence. Don't ask, she's not ready for that talk yet. Issei decided to trust Yog on this, coming over to Aza and wrapping an arm around her. Come on, we're getting ice cream. Huh? Ice cream? Aza asked, looking up in bewilderment at the subject change. You're sad and ice cream makes you happy, he said with a grin. Unless you were acting that on our date. Aza smiled and shook her head. I like it. The coldness reminds me of space, but it's sweet like you, she answered in a small voice. Issei stumbled at that. Well, glad you enjoyed my cream so much, he joked, chuckling at her comparison. Aza opened her mouth, but closed it. I didn't actually mean that, but, yes, I enjoyed it, Aza assured with a small, meaningful smile. Ah, love, Yog teased playfully, mock swooning behind them as she leaned on her sword. Come on, you're getting ice cream too, Yog, Issei said with an inviting grin. Huh? Yog stopped and snapped upright, looking at Issei in confusion at the Invita. Well, if you insist, Yog said with her usual confident smirk. Great. 'Cause I want to know what a time goddess's favorite flavor is, Issei stated, playfully but honestly while ignoring a small headache that was passing through his skull. Believe it or not, it tastes different to me in each timeline, so even I don't know, Yog explained with a grin of her own. Eh? Wait, so your taste buds are different in each universe or something? Issei asked in confusion. Yeah, something like that, Yog answered in a more or less tone. But only with ice cream. Bubblegum ice cream in this timeline might taste the same as chocolate ice cream in another, but popcorn always tastes like popcorn. Issei looked to Aza for some better explanation, but she just shrugged helplessly. With that, he decided to just enjoy some time eating treats with the two eldritch ladies. Meanwhile, they came from the blackness. Beasts of withered flesh, eyeless and mouthless, and headless too, their pear-shaped bodies crawled and leaped and scurried on 5 limbs. Each somehow like a leg and an arm at the same time, multi-jointed, with hands that had too many fingers. From the lump on their back emerged 3 tendrils. They were like tongues, but whip-like and barbed. They had descended upon the mountain like a plague, slaughtering all of their feathered preys. Wings were dismembered and bowels were ripped open. Those that tried to fly away were shot down, the tongues launching out like snakes, wrapping around their targets and dragging them down into a final fall from the skies. Yet, these beasts did not eat or steal. They only killed. And they soon killed them all. All, except her. She covered her mouth, trying to silence her sobs of grief and terror as she hid under the corpses of her family, her mother, her father, her brothers, her sisters. All had died, leaving only her alive by chance and luck. She could not calm her breathing, for she could not look away. It was either gaze out at the nightmare outside, or look upon the dead faces of her loved ones. Kill. She bit her tongue to stop the scream, tasting her own blood. One of them was right on top of her big sister. She couldn't see it, but she could hear it and she could feel the weight pressing the bloody corpse down on her, forcing her down into the crimson pool forming beneath her. The creature, it was speaking, somehow? But it had no mouth, so how? Killing, killed them all we have. Please, pleasing, please the center shall be. Insult, insulting, insulted her these vermin will, have, it said in a maddening, senseless voice as it relished this moment. Find more we can, another spoke, and she could see this one. It had one of its limbs raised, showing its open hand in her direction. She swallowed, drinking her own blood by accident, as she saw that there was a mouth of sorts at the center of the palm. And from it emerged a small tendril with an unblinking eyeball attached to it. She dared not move, lest it notice her. No. Only those of dark wings. Suffering only for these. Other wings are their enemies. Let them enjoy whatever wretch remained, the one above her said dismissively. For a moment they said nothing, did nothing, until she saw the one before her turn its gaze to the side. She saw it backing away and felt the one above her retreating as well. Were they leaving? Had she survived? Was some god taking pity on her? A black shoe stepped right in front of her, stepping on the wing of her father, crushing feathers and bones like they were paste. What a wonderful mess you've all made, a woman's voice murmured out with dismissive amusement. No god was watching over her. Not favorably, at least. She knew that instinctively. She could feel something cold and terrible seeping into the air, just from the presence, just from the voice. Have these worms not paid offense to your great progenitor, crawling one of the beasts asked with, was that terror on its seeing tongue? Not these, no. These are harpies. One of the terrestrials I like, actually, the female said with a chilling giggle. She smiled brokenly at knowing the great she found something of value in her. Then she froze. Why did she think that? The ones you were looking for have wings separate from their arms, the crawling one explained, tapping her shoe into the bloody mess that was one of her mangled siblings. She almost pulled herself out of the corpses, to crawl before the great she and lick the filth from the dark divinity she was kneeling before. But she stopped herself, trying to cover her ears with her wings and block out the terrible, wonderful, insidious voices creeping so tenderly into her brain. We apologize for our mistake, O far gah. The creature stopped, screaming in pain as glowing azure blood filled the air, literally, filled, as it was slow to fall. Begone you petty things, the great she commanded, bored of their insolence, and they of course obeyed, scurrying back into the abyss from which they sprung. For the great she was great and terrible. Yes I am, little bird. She froze, she trembled, and she cried. She was going to die. This was the end. The end indeed, little bird, the end indeed, the great she purred in a horrifyingly loving voice as the bodies above her began to tremble. "Here, let me get a look at you." And just like that, the corpses were ripped away and tossed aside like trash, with the barest of effort. Or was it effort? The figure towering over her was not leaning or crouching, just standing. How had she flung the bodies away? Did she want to know? Come now. Look me in the eye. She had no choice but to obey. There was no scenario, no reality that existed where she didn't not obey that voice. It was not a request or even a command. It was a simple fact of reality, such was the will of the great she. She humbly lifted her head, staying up at the dark beauty, and lost her soul in those yellow eyes. Literally. The eldritch giggled deviously, her fingers beckoning the body of the young harpy to float and rise. The end, and the beginning, my soon-to-be pet. Don't you have enough horrors to look after? The crawling one smirked over her shoulder at the newcomer. Was wondering when you were going to show up. Don't worry, I just wanted to pick up something to play with before you cleaned up this mess. And you know I can't actually stop you. Indeed, the crawling one mused tauntingly. Say hello to the family when you go tattling, little key. Meanwhile, Issei knew he had forgotten something while on their way to get ice cream. He was promptly reminded of it, or rather her, as Gaktha took a seat with them in the booth, sitting next to Yog. Oh, right, you, Issei said idly. All-Mother, Kungur, Great Lurker, Gaktha greeted with respect, bowing her head to each of them. Gakthorshafst? Yog greeted with a raised eyebrow, smiling at Azza. You were worried even with her keeping a gaze on him? By you're overprotective. Azza gave a pouting glare at Yog while Issei rolled that full, eldritch name in his head. I feel like I almost understand that, Issei stated in interest, getting a head tilt from the black-faced eldritch. So, Azza, why didn't you tell me about her? Azza gave him a confused look. Didn't I? She asked, looking to Yog suspiciously. Yog, did you rewind time when I wasn't paying attention? Yes, but not for that, Yog answered honestly, glancing out of the window. Granted, my pet might have eaten up a minute or two. Pet? Issei asked, suspecting that Yog's idea of a pet was anything except normal. I'll introduce you another time, Yog assured, waving a hand to Azza. The Eldritch Queen shrugged. Beloved, this is Gaktha, one of the Afgstan. They're a race I, created, she explained, motioning to Gaktha, who bowed her head again. Created? Issei repeated before stopping himself. Right, Eldritch Goddess and Queen of the Universe. Don't worry. One day, you'll have your own little horde of cute alien girls calling you all daddy, Yog said teasingly. Issei grinned at the mental image. Azza just put a finger to her chin. Well, technically, he's already the All-Father to Gaktha and the others. This is true, Gaktha agreed, causing Issei to sputter and blush. Though, most of us just refer to you as the Kungur for now. And marrying the creator of a species is never the same as making your own for the first time, Yog stated offhandedly. Alright, Issei accepted awkwardly, realizing that they were completely serious and not teasing him. Or not just teasing him, in Yog's case. So, think we should order soon? Yog smirked, raising her sword and tapping it against nothing, making the air ripple. And what will you all be having? A waitress asked with a polite smile to the group of four. I desire any kind, but drowning in sprinkles, Gaktha answered flatly, her empty gaze staring through the soul of the woman. Alright, she said, trying not to make eye contact with the creepy one. Just vanilla is fine for me, Yog said with a wave, tilting her hat up with her seethed sword. Issei raised an eyebrow, wondering if regular people even noticed that Yog was dressed like a sailor with a sword, or if Yog just willed them to ignore her strange outfit. I will take the ikasumi. Azza said enthusiastically. Wait, they have that here? You have that here? Issei asked in surprise, looking from Azza to the waitress. Yes indeed. It's a very new item though, she answered with a smile. I'll try that too, actually, Issei answered as she wrote down the order and left. After a moment, he looked to Azza. Did you warp reality so they'd have squid ink ice cream here? Yes? Azza answered with a head tilt. Is something wrong with that? Not really, just making sure, Issei answered awkwardly. It would have shown up here in another year or two anyway, Yog assured idly, turning to Gaktha. So, I think you have something to say, Miss Gazer? Gaktha nodded, turning to Azza. I had a meeting with the leader of the fallen angels. The air around Azza suddenly got very thick as she gained an even look. Why was he anywhere near Issei? She asked in a dangerous tone. He didn't know that he was, Gaktha answered honestly. Issei and Aza said in sync. So, wait, was this while I was at the park? And it was just a coincidence? Issei asked, not sure if he should be bothered or not that more fallen angels had been nearby. Gaktha nodded. He appeared to be under the misassumption that I was a servant of a lesser eldritch, more local to Earth. Oh, okay then, Aza said, calming down instantly. So, what did he want? He was hoping that I might relay a message to my mistress, who would relay it to the Queen of the Eldritch, Gaktha explained. I decided it might be best not to correct his mistake and simply listen to what he wished you to hear, which is that the whelps you disposed of were not working under his orders. And that he wishes to apologize, and if needed, give compensation. What kind of compensation? Issei asked curiously. Issei was not an athlete. He certainly wasn't out of shape, per se, but he wasn't the type to do daily jogging or weightlifting or any kind of regular physical activity. Thus, he wasn't surprised that he was out of steam after running 3 miles, sweating all over and ready to collapse. Phew. Okay, that was, yeah, Issei said, slumping over to sit under a tree, taking deep and refreshing breaths. Running 3 miles exhausted him, but running the first mile had been surprisingly easy. He knew that had tired him out the last time they had a run like that in gym, but now it suddenly felt it was no more exertion than a quick run to school. Idly, he grabbed a nearby rock, weighing it experimentally, before throwing it. To his own satisfaction, the stone was partially embedded in the trunk now. Well, that's certainly some improvement, Issei said with a small grin to himself. Indeed. Issei glanced down to his hand, seeing the red gauntlet appearing. Hey, Dreg, he greeted. I see you are training still, Dreg said in praise. Good. At this pace, it will not be long before you can go toe-to-toe with the average devil or angel. Yeah, meanwhile my girlfriend can kill those by sneezing, Issei said with an amused snort. It is best to focus on your own progress and not the gap between you and your girlfriend as you so casually call her, Dreg suggested wisely. As it stands, you will soon be beyond all normal human limits. As opposed to abnormal human limits? Issei questioned, half joking but also half curious. Humans that enter the supernatural fray often find their ways to go beyond their mundane kin, those that survive at any rate, Dreg explained. Also, don't think I didn't notice. Notice what? Issei questioned, raising an eyebrow at the green gem. If this is about the new tentacle hentai dash. No, definitely not that, Dreg cut off with a groan. What I'm referring to is your power level, or your potential rather. It's stabilized. You desire to become an outer god, don't you? Issei stared for a moment before sighing. It's not what you think. I am not judging you for wanting power, Dreg assured. Most wouldn't see any reason to turn down joining the ranks of the mightiest of the Eldritch. It's not about that, Issei denied with a grimace. I actually had my heart set on Elder God at first. Really? Dreg questioned in surprise. I mean, yeah? I wouldn't be the most powerful, but I'd be able to take human form again sooner than the rest. Really, being top dog in the universe wasn't really an important factor at the time, Issei explained idly. At the time. What changed? Dreg questioned. Was it being around 2 of the strongest of them? Not exactly, Issei answered, pausing in thought. When I saw Aza run back, I realized I don't want her to feel like she has to worry about me every time we're not together. She's the queen of the universe, literally. She deserves to have a guy that doesn't constantly need to hide behind her if something bad happens. So, you want to protect yourself, and in doing so, protect her. Admirable, but don't deny that you're enjoying the power itself as well, Dreg encouraged, figurative glancing to the rock stuck in the tree. A healthy lust for power helps in obtaining it. Okay, yeah, it does feel kind of awesome that I can one day punch a boulder into dust, Issei admitted with a sheepish grin. Or throw a car. Or something cartoony like that. Still so small in your imagination, Dreg said in amusement. One day, you'll be able to conquer a planet simply by arriving on it. Yeah, that's beyond my ability to really think about, Issei admitted idly. Going to sound weird, but are you going to teach me how to use you? This gauntlet. I can, but be warned, when we are done, you will not have the energy to do anything active with the Sultana, Dreg forewarned. Challenge accepted. Meanwhile, in an abandoned subway station beneath the city of Kuo, several figures in black cloaks gathered in the darkness. Are you the one that has met the great center? One asked, staring down at the smallest among them. The figure pulled the hood to reveal her face, kneeling on the ground. This one has indeed, High Priest, Aika answered solemnly with a bowed head. And her beloved. Issei Hayadu. They all whispered the name as if it was both sacred and cursed, something to respect and fear. Aika almost smirked. If Issei could see this. Silence, the head priest barked. The gods stir, young one, and the court of chaos is coming to earth. This one knows and rejoices, head priest, Aika answered with a smile. Our lords and ladies will grace earth with their dreadful majesty. Yes, they will, the head priest agreed ominously. But there must be order in this chaos, young one, direction to the madness. And the dream which has need of you. The Dree dash. Aika exclaimed in shock and awe, her snapping up in an instant. What does she wish of me, head priest? Name it. Patience, the head priest scowled harshly. You have been blessed by the presence of the sultana and know her sultan from before his ascension began. This is truth, yes, Aika agreed solemnly. Aika, unless commanded by a god, you are forbidden from leaving the generality and joining a proper cult. Aika froze, her skin turning paler than ash. Have I failed in some way, speaker? Have I paid offense to the great chaos herself and been damned? Silence your heart, Aika, this is no curse but a blessing and a task, the head priest informed. Blessing? Task? Aika repeated, her fears settling. Your blessing is that you are to be the messenger, from us to the gods and the gods to us, the priest explained. If the great queen or any of her court has need to command us, they may do so directly, through you. None dared to question or wonder why Azathoth or the other eldritch gods might not come to the cultists themselves. To even suggest such a thing was an offensive thought. If the unknowable divinities deigned to bless them with their presence, even just in human form, that was for them to decide, not their lowly worshippers. I understand. I will let the majesties know. But what is my task then? Aika question curiously. Our shrouded mistress has deemed the number of faithful upon this rock too limited. It is time begin spreading the effulgent words once more, the priest explained meaningfully. Seemingly from nowhere, something landed before Aika. A book. An almost ordinary book, but with a cover that was white as bone with texts that appeared akin to fresh blood. The Lessernomican, she recognized with a smile that was bordering on manic. I do wish you initiates would use the proper name. It is the Herald of the Stars, the priest reminded with a sigh. Aika, for once, ignored her elder as she reverently took the book in hand. The book that captures the attention of all those that might be ready and willing to accept the words of the gods, leading them on the path to joining the worship of our gods from the stars. Oh, how I have missed your turbid pages, she said nostalgically. I can almost remember when my parents began reading this at bedtime. Your bloodline's devotion is well known among the faithful, if erratic, the head priest mused. I know few others whose family has served so many different patrons. Oh, don't mind this lowly one, head priest, Aika said, composing herself. Am I to bring this to the academy, and let it do its work? Yes, for now. It will fall to you to guide the newcomers of the flocks. Who knows, perhaps the center of the center will gain the foundation of his own cult soon, he said, on that matter. He's currently uninterested, Aika explained. He is, still coming to terms with his divinity. One can scarcely imagine, the head priest said in understanding. But you know him yourself. Do you believe that his interest will change? Oh, yes, definitely, Aika said with a smirk. I can say with absolute certainty that our young Lord of Lords will one day be all too thrilled to have a cult of worshippers. Namely female followers with certain assets. Ah, so he'll be that kind of god, the head priest said in understanding. I wonder what his relationship will be with the black goat? Trust me, I will be watching out for that myself, Aika assured with amusement. Is there anything else? Just one, the head priest declared, clapping his hands loudly, prompting light to fill the room. Congratulations. Aika blinked away the brightness, finding that the dark area was lit up to reveal that there were many other people standing around foldable tables, colorful cloths and banners, a small banquet of foods and drinks, and a banner. Hurrah for Messenger Aika. Aika grinned. You guys threw me a party? Of course, the head priest declared. It's a huge honor, something to celebrate. Besides, with so many eldritch on Earth, we might all be dead in the near future, so we might as well as enjoy life while we're here. Amen, several people declared. Hey, Aika. I brought a horse for us to sacrifice. Meanwhile. Achoo. Issei nearly smacked himself in the face with the red gauntlet, instinctively covering the sneeze. Thanks, Drake remarked dryly. Sorry. Sneezing fit out of nowhere. Do eldritch gods get colds? Issei asked absently. Yes, but they're eldritch colds. They wouldn't make you sneeze like a human, Drake answered. Most likely, some of the human cultists are saying a prayer or two in your name. Wait, really? Prayers cause sneezes? Issei asked, almost amused by that. No, Drake answered. You humans have this strange superstition that if one is speaking of you, it causes you to sneeze. Correct? Yeah? Issei answered before blinking. I'm subconsciously making that real, aren't I? For yourself, yes, Drake confirmed in amusement. You might only be on the start of your ascension, but it's not surprising that warping your own existence comes naturally. Well, hope my subconscious tones it down some in the future, Issei murmured as he leaned against the tree with a tired sigh. So, how'd I do? Drake turned his figurative gaze out onto the forest, or lack thereof. Issei had taken to sitting in a tree branch and taking dragon shots at the landscape until a good-sized clearing had formed where there had been none. Give your current strength, this is almost impressive. The shots are a bit weak. That's weak for you? Issei asked, grinning through his surprise. But you were able to keep firing more than I would have expected. I believe your evolution is prioritizing your stamina. For obvious reasons, Drake answered pointedly. Hey, just because my other head made the call, doesn't mean it was a bad one, Issei countered with a snicker before pausing. Huh? Drake, am I imagining it or can I actually sense someone coming this way? Drake remained silent, but Issei could tell he was still there. Master. Issei stiffened, looking down to see Gaktha staring up at him with her blank stare. Gaktha, what's up? A creature wants an audience with you. Shall I deal with her? Gaktha inquired with a head tilt that seemed to turn just a bit too far. Do you know who she is? Issei asked curiously. She is one of the creatures attending this school you and mistress attend to, Gaktha answered without inflection. With eldritch, creature, could mean a devil or a human. And she asked for me? Issei clarified with a raised eyebrow. She asked for Oz's boyfriend, Gaktha explained. Issei was surprised by that. Did the entire supernatural world know he was with Azathoth? He didn't know what to think of that yet. I'll meet with her, Issei answered as he jumped down, landing on his feet before falling back onto his rear with a wince. Master? Is your body injured? Gaktha asked, just a hint of urgency in her voice. No. Just messed up that landing. I'm good, he answered, getting up and rubbing his back as his red gauntlet vanished. So, where is this mystery girl? Gaktha nodded, turning to lead Issei through the trees. They walked for a good few minutes before Issei saw a figure he knew very, very well. I hope I'm not interrupting anything inappropriate. Issei scratched his cheek while Gaktha remained unresponsive to the joke. Just getting some solo practice. So, I'm pretty sure we both know who we are, but I don't think we've ever formally met. I'm Issei Hayadu, Issei offered with a small smile as he tried not to stare too much at her chest. Her very, very well-endowed chest. And I'm Akino Himejima, Akino returned coyly. But as you said, we both already knew that. Right, so, are you a succubus? Issei asked curiously. Akino chuckled. Oh no, I'm a devil. I'm not sure how much you know about everything, but I'm basically a servant of Rias Gremory. Servant? Issei repeated, mind wandering to some very lewd images that involved Akino serving Rias in certain ways. Glad to see that you haven't changed much, Akino remarked with a coy look about her before it melted into a scowl. But I'm sorry, this isn't a meeting between classmates. Yeah, figured as much, Issei said with a sigh. So, what can I do for you? Akino glanced careful to Gaktha before continuing. You know Kaneko Tuju, she said, knowing he did. Everyone did. She was the school's unofficial mascot. She's one of us too. Issei opened his mouth, then closed it. Okay, I'm actually not surprised anymore. Would have pegged her as a cat girl though. Oh, I'm sure you'd love to peg someone, Akino remarked lewdly. Yes, obviously. Issei admitted with a blush. Akino looked amused before turning serious once more. She was hurt during an incident with your lover. Aza hurt Kaneko? What happened? Issei asked in concern. She was too close, Gaktha remarked, looking to him. She was there when Mistress dealt with the feathered fools. Oh, Issei said slowly. Okay, I'm not going to pretend to know how bad that may or may not be. Is she okay? She's alive and she's not insane. But she's very out of it, paranoid, and I've seen her hurt herself. Not intentionally, but I'm worried all the same, Akino answered carefully. I was hoping that I could ask you for a favor, to see if there is anything that might be able to help Kaneko recover. That's it? Issei asked in surprise. Sure, yeah, I can do that. But why ask me, the perverted guy that's still mostly human? Perhaps I just wanted to see what a literal goddess found so interesting about one of the perverted trio? Aquino asked teasingly. Oh, trust me, I ask myself that once a day at least, Issei assured with a grin. So, yeah, I'll see if anyone can help and I'll try to make sure they don't accidentally make things worse. Thank you, Aquino said with a brief bow, her chest swaying to Issei's delight. Issei froze as a magic circle formed under Aquino, which she sank into and disappeared with a wave. Teleporting circles. Cool, Issei said, looking to Gaktha. Can we do that? I can teleport to a degree, master, but portal magic is not a skill I possess, Gaktha informed. May I ask something? Huh? Sure, Issei answered curiously. Despite being something of a guard, they hadn't spoken much. Why did you agree to help these creatures? Gaktha asked curiously. Do they have something you desire? Oh yeah, several things I desire, Issei said with lewd amusement. But that's not it. I just felt a bit like an asshole since Kaneko got hurt because Aza had to protect me. I am confused? What does an anus have to do with this? Gaktha asked blankly. Issei made a mental note to teach her human slang at some point. If not for your Aza, I'd be warning you that this could be a trap, Drake spoke up. Oh, you are still here, Issei realized in vague surprise. And what do you mean? I can sense some fallen angel in that one, Drake remarked. Wait, so she's not a devil? Issei asked with a frown. No, she is, Drake confirmed. To my understanding, devils have been able to turn other races into devils, to boost their numbers. Oh, so she switched sides or something. So, does that make her a devil, of half and half? Issei mused. Who knows, Drake said with a spiritual shrug. It's irrelevant either way. Few of this world are going to be foolish enough to attack you if they even partially comprehend who you are connected to and what you are becoming. Then why all the protection and worry? Issei asked with a raised eyebrow. Because Mistress would will an insect out of existence if it tried to bite you in her presence, Gaktha pointed out bluntly. Issei sweat dropped, but saw her point. Meanwhile, Azazel wasn't sure who or what he expected when he opened the door, but he decided no expectations was the best route. That said, the dark-haired girl with a biker jacket was almost too normal. Sup? You the fallen boss? She asked bluntly. Yes, I suppose I am. Are you here to kill me? He asked, matching her tone. Nah. The Dream Queen just sent me to here to see what you had to say, she answered, waving his question off. Name's Zothra. Dug over from Mongolia for this. Dug? Azazel repeated before waving it off. Well, come on in. Oh, and the name is Azazel. Right, you're that one. Knew there were 3 of you in charge, but never could keep straight who was which, Zothra mused as she sat down on the couch, rather gracelessly, perching her foot on the table. So, some of your people pissed off the Sultana and you're giving something to smooth things over. That right? Just about, Azazel answered, appreciating the straightforward bluntness. Sorry, but you seem very human, I know. I've been on this rock a long time and learned to adapt. Mainly for junk food, but still, Zothra admitted. So, I have a sibling I don't like leaving alone for too long, so can we? Right. I'll keep this brief. You know what sacred gears are? Azazel asked curiously. Yeah, got killed by one once, Zothra admitted casually. One of my wayward subordinates that is now gone was planning to steal one away from a human. It's called Twilight Healing, and it's a very powerful tool of healing, Azazel explained. Not trying to sound like a bitch, but you think that'll actually do much for us? I literally got better from death, Zothra pointed out with a scowl. Oh, I'm aware. But I hear the Queen of the Eldritch is interested in a human. Now, I don't pretend to know who or what Issei Hayadu is, but as far as I know, he's still around the power of an average human, Azazel remarked. Zothra's eyes widened. Clever. You're giving Aza something to help keep her Kungur safe and well, she said with a wide, praising smile. Azazel raised an eyebrow at that term, Kungur. Was that important? Or just an eldritch term of affection? So, where can I find this twin night healing, or whatever you called it? Zothra questioned, looking around the room idly. Azazel chuckled and jabbed his thumb over his shoulder. Right in the other room. They both rose as Azazel led her to the kitchen and there, on the table, laid an unconscious human. Huh? She your snack, or your treat? Zothra asked casually. Neither, Azazel waved off. This is Asia Argento, the holder of the Twilight Healing. I put her in a deep sleep. Oh. I have to take the girl too? Zathra asked with a frown. Well, removing the twilight healing would kill her, Azazel remarked, getting no reaction to that. Also, I figured that this Kungur would appreciate her on top of the healing, or on top of him, rather. Buying them both. Clever and smart, Zathra acknowledged. Okay, I'll take her. So, is there a time limit on this sleeping thing or is there a way to wake her up? You don't know how? Azazel asked, somewhat surprised. This wasn't exactly an advance or special technique. I'm not the overtly magical one, Zathra waved off. Never mind, we'll figure it out. With that, she waved her hand over the body. Azazel leaned back slightly as his kitchen rattled suddenly. Without any other warning, worms started to crawl out of every hole and space. The sink, the trash, the cupboards, the toaster even. They swarmed and they were large, fat worms. They scurried far faster than any worm should be able to, climbing up the table and crawling over the girl, encompassing her entirely, pulsing on her as if devouring her whole. Then, just as quickly as they came, they sped to Zathra, who leaned down and placed out her hand, allowing the creatures to swarm up her sleeve. Just like that, they were gone, and the kitchen seemed to be just as it had been, minus one human. Those are all gone, right? I'm not going to find any hiding in my food? Azazel asked suspiciously. If you do, they're not mine, Zathra answered as she turned to leave. It's been a good talk, but I got to bury on out of here. I'll send your regards off to the higher-ups. Thanks, Azazel said, sighing as she left and closed the door. Poor kid. Everything with the church and now this, he mused with a sigh. Oh well, maybe she'll find some comfort serving a god beyond God himself. Yog. Instantly, the time goddess appeared, sitting on his bed at that. You called, my king, she asked playfully. Did you need something? Don't you already know? Issei asked curiously. Yes, but if I'd get lonely if I didn't act like Yog suddenly stopped with an embarrassed Lu. I know all the things you might answer with. Like asking to see my tits, Yog answered with a smirk. 3 I wouldn't say no, but that's not what I called you for, Issei admitted. I need help with something eldritch related. And you didn't ask your darling, adoring, pampering wife? Yog asked in a mock scandalized tone. How adulterous. Issei deadpanned before sighing. I'm just going to ignore your supposed all-knowingness and just pretend you're as linear as the rest of us. Yog tilted her head. Azza told you that joke. Actually Gatch did, but Azza told her, Issei answered offhandedly. Look, if I called her, Azza would drop everything and come running. Yeah, floating? More like she'd rip away the very concept of the distance separating you, but yes, Yog acknowledged with a shrug. Even if what she was doing was important, Issei pointed out. But you always have free time someone, Yog finished with a chuckle. You're turning out to be a clever king. Yeah, well, I love Azza, but I know I have to be careful with her, or she might destroy the planet, Issei reminded and blinked. I said that way too calmly. So, moving on. Yes, I know you had a talk with one of the devils about their friend that Azza mind melted, Yog confessed. And I know you want me to help. I'm just not sure how you want me to help as a lot is branching off from that. I don't suppose you'll just tell me the best option? Issei asked with a frown. Only if your life depended on it, so no, Yog answered with a shrug. Fair enough, Issei said with a sigh. So, okay, do you know an eldritch that is good at healing minds from stuff like that and understands humans, or at least devils? I know a few, yes, Yog admitted with a nod. Good. Now, which one is least likely to make things worse? Issei stipulated pointedly. Now that does narrow it down a lot, Yog adjusted with amusement. Still, it might just be best to get her a checkup with the one who patched her up in the first place. Patched her up? Issei repeated in surprise. Oh yes. If left as she was, that little kitten probably would have clawed out her own tongue and eyes, Yog informed, utterly serious. Okay, I'm still human enough that I felt just a bit sick from that thought, Issei muttered with a sigh. Who are we talking about, exactly? An outer god that is, oddly enough, native to Earth, Yog informed. Most mortals outside her cults know her as Madam E or other titles, but we called her Yidra, the Dream Witch. Yidra. Okay, so, do we need to go to some underground church or something? Issei asked curiously. Yog giggled. Oh, you're silly. She's on her way now. Huh? Issei asked, bewildered. Is this one of those things where you're going time travel to tell her to meet us after she already gets here? No, Issei, I mean you just summoned her, Yog informed, getting more confusion. You said her name. What, That's enough? Issei asked in shock. Issei, I know you're treating this as dating or an engagement, but as far as we're concerned, you're already married to Aza, Yog reminded with a smirk. Meaning, you're the king of the Eldritch. And when the king calls your name, well, it'd be rather rude to you and to Aza if they ignored you. Issei started for a moment before shaking his head in disbelief. I don't think I'll ever get used to the idea of literal gods eager to hear what I want. Yog gave him a long stare. It's different with Aza. I just see a cute girl that wants in my pants. Not the mistress of the universe. Issei defended indignantly. Yog playfully swooned at that. And she loves you all the more for it, Yog assured with a smile before turning serious. Though, just for the record? Even if you called on an eldritch, a lot of them don't have a very human definition of soon or timely, so don't expect them to arrive at the drop of a hat. Right. 100 years is a weekend for you guys, Issei said before looking up in thought. Am I going to be like that? In a few 100,000 years, maybe, Yog mused with a shrug. Anything else I can do for you, O kingly one? Probably not, since you don't like spoiling whatever script you're reading, Issei said before frowning. Why does it feel like I've known you for years already? I'd make a joke about that, but I'm pretty sure it's just Aza rubbing off on you in a very mental sense, giving you some subconscious details about me, Yog mused. Or it could be your own eldritch nature in the future echoing back to you. I can echo back to myself? Issei asked in bewilderment, not sure what that even meant. Is that an eldritch thing? Not all of us, no, but you're Aza's husbando, so you get special Aza class perks, Yog explained. Such as? Issei pressed curiously. Yog opened her mouth before looking very uncertain, almost worried even until she. Being able to get a god's respectful attention by saying their name isn't enough? Yog teased. Point, Issei accepted, knowing that Yog wouldn't elaborate. Besides, he was starting to get ahead of himself now. Any ETA on when this Hydra will get here? The good news is that she has a very solid grasp of time relative to humans, so I'd say in about an hour or less. Yog answered with a shrug. It would be sooner, but she's trying to not spook the supernaturals any more than Aza has. Huh? What do you mean? Issei asked curiously. Oh, nothing to worry about. Say goodbye to the devils for me. With that, Yog waved before she warped out of existence in a spiral distortion. Wait and she's gone, Issei remarked. Does it ever occur to you that you have casual, even rude conversations with some of the most powerful beings in reality? Drake asked curiously. I try not to think about it too much, Issei confessed as he looked at his hand. So, you know anything about this Hydra? Yes, actually. Everyone on Earth that interacts with the Eldritch in more than a passing manner is aware of the Dream Witch, Drake answered. Okay, and that would be why? Is Earth her territory or something? Issei questioned. Not exactly. Earth is one of the worlds that the Eldritch have agreements upon, that it belongs to none of them. At least, not since Cthulhu and his cities were trapped beneath the waves, Drake explained. Right, Cthulhu. Even normal people have heard that name at least once. Is he a problem? Issei asked curiously. Not from what I know. Much of what this Lovecraft wrote of them was distorted or untrue, but you should make judgments for yourself, Drake advised. But we're getting off topic. The Dream Witch is the one who manages many of the Eldritch affairs and matters on Earth. Before the Queen herself showed up, obviously. I've met her once or twice. She's not the type to start a fight. I find it interesting though, that she helped this devil. How come? Issei asked curiously. Because you don't often see a queen going out of her way to heal a random peasant, Drake remarked. I would have expected her to send a servant for that. If it was less than the Empress of the Center, I would have. Issei blinked as he turned to face a woman that hadn't been there 5 seconds ago. She was beautiful though, or at least her body was, curvy and slender, a figure of feminine perfection that was clad in cloth that was both thin and skimpy but ornate and regal. Her face was obscured in pure darkness by the hood of the crimson cloak she wore. Long slender fingers flexed and curled as she brought her hand up to her chest and gave a polite, very respectful bow. A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Azathoth, she greeted. I am Hydra. You're early, Issei remarked absently, still shocked by her arrival. He was trying to not focus solely on her boobs, but in his defense, they were barely covered as is. He could practically see the areolas through the cloth. Unlike what she claims, Yog is not infallible, Hydra answered, her voice pleasant yet flat, alluring but down to earth. What do you wish of me? If it is cultists, you will have them soon enough. Yeah, no, not that, issei answered. You patched up a devil a while back, right? Goes to my school, got mine melted by Aza a bit. Chiron the Nico devil. I recall her, Yidra answered with a nod. Nico? No, never mind that for now. Look, I don't know how to say this exactly, but, you mind doing a checkup on her? Issei asked sheepishly. A checkup? Yidra repeated, her head tilting. Or at least her hood did. Look, I get we're supposed to be beyond the whole good and evil thing. But her friends are worried she might be getting worse and I feel like an asshole since this happened to her because Aza had to protect me, Issei explained with a sigh. Yidra stared for a long moment, silently observing him. You are kind, Issei Hayadu. Thanks? Issei gave curiously. So, will you help? I will. If you will accompany me to her, she answered simply, getting a curious look. The Nico is a servant of Lucifer's sister. Issei blinked. That raises questions that I won't ask right now. At any rate, if I go myself, I may accidentally provoke and alarm them. You however might have a, shall we say, diplomatic effect on the meeting, Yidra suggested. Me? Diplomatic? Issei asked skeptically. I'd recommend listening to her, Drake spoke up. Hello, Yidra. Drake, Yidra greeted with a nod to the green glow in Issei's hand. I trust that there are no hard feelings about the last time we met? No, that was warranted, Drake remarked. Issei glanced curiously between his hand and the eldritch. Mind filling me in? Drake sighed at unwanted memories. Yidra killed one of my old wielders after they butchered one of her cults. Oh. Sorry to hear that? Issei offered, looking up nervously. Don't be. That was nearly 1,000 years ago, Yidra assured solemnly. You literally have a holiday dedicated to mourning that massacre, Drake reminded. They could both feel the outer god's unseen glare. Drake gulped at that. I'll shut up now. Yeah, probably a good idea, Issei agreed as the glow faded. So, what now? Well, it might be best if I changed form a bit, Yidra remarked, her form rippling and distorting. In her place was a woman, or late-aged teen with dark purple hair and green eyes. Her outfit was replaced by a gothic black dress, complete with black stockings and long-sleeve fingerless gloves with chains, of all things, adorning it, crossing over the top of her generous bosom and even one going down the cleavage. Issei eyed her up and down with wide eyes. You might want something more, casual? Yidra cocked her head. This is my casual. Issei had no response to that. The walk to the academy was rather unremarkable for Issei, despite how oddly dressed Yidra was. So, what do they all see when they look at you? Issei asked, finding he inquired that far too casually than he would have not too long ago. Yidra gave a hum at that. Whatever they see is casual, Issei. That's good, I guess, Issei accepted. Hey, can I ask a question while we walk? Of course, Yidra accepted. Something I've been wondering about, but Aza doesn't seem to know, and Yog probably won't tell, Issei rambled a bit. I get why these fallen angels targeted me, Drake being in my hand and all, but why try to kill me, exactly? Yes, that was an odd choice on their part, Yidra admitted. It is likely that they had no idea what sacred gear you had, just that it was a Longinus. They must have decided to not try and take yours while just focusing on the one they had. But with the devil around here, they knew you might become an enemy, so leaving you alone wasn't much of an option. You dying just meant they'd have to wait for another wielder to be born with the boosted gear. Damn. One time I almost wished they had been greedy. You know, if it wasn't for Aza, Issei mused. Extracting it from your soul would have killed you, Yidra mused. Granted, I doubt Aza would have allowed that to happen, even if she hadn't made her move on you. Issei blinked at that. What do you mean? Yidra stopped to look Issei in the eye. This isn't the first time she offered her heart to you, Issei Hayadu. It's just the first time you accepted. Yeah, well, I was probably an idiot in my past lives then, Issei all but grumbled to himself. Yidra smiled. It is kind that you think so, but no. Sometimes you had a personal reason to decline, others, the Sultana didn't present her love so delicately. Issei stopped and looked at Yidra again, recognition in his eyes. Wait, you mean you knew me in past lives? I've kept watch over the Queen's eternal courtship of you, as have others, Yidra admitted. Whenever you turn her down, she holds true to her promise, you have a life of happiness, even without her. And she tries to ensure you survive long enough for her to make the offer to begin with. So, if Aza hadn't been there to save me? Issei trailed off in thought. The devils were aware of your potential as well. You would have been saved and reincarnated as one of them, no doubt, Ydra informed. And I'm sure you would have found everything you had ever wanted had you not become her beloved. There was a long silence over the two, the crowds of people seemingly ignoring them. His shoulders sagging, Issei let out a sigh. Yid. Can I call you Yid? She raised an eyebrow but didn't deny his request. What does a guy like me possibly give to Aza? Because I'm feeling more and more like I owe her a gift or something, a surprise. Ydra blinked, almost startled. Forgive me, that wasn't my intent. I may grasp humans well, but I forgot for an instant you are barely eldritch in mind as it is. Your love is honestly all she desires, your love and your happiness. Yeah, but I'm not asshole enough to not want to give a bit back for that, Issei said with a frown. What do eldritch couples do for gifts? Ydra paused to consider that. Most of them may be beyond you for the moment. Well, yeah, I'd write her a love letter in the stars if I could, but that's a long way off my power scale, Issei reasoned. I was considering some of the rituals eldritch have their personal cults perform for another god they fancy, Ydra answered. That seems, I was going to say lazy, but I can see how it could be kind of touching, Issei accepted before shaking his head. Thanks for talking with me, Yid, but we should probably get back to this Kaneko business. Ydra nodded in acceptance, giving thoughtful looks to the back of the young king. Meanwhile. You did what? Akino crossed her arms. We already talked about this before, Rias. Yes, but I thought you'd at least warn me before you tried this. Rias said, massaging her eyes in frustration. Do you not understand how dangerous this is, Akino? Akino frowned at her friend and king. No, stop, that was rhetorical, Rias said flatly, a hand on her hip. Okay, ignoring the disaster that could happen from even just annoying Aza, you just asked for eldritch help. Through Issei Hayadu, but eldritch help all the same. You know that's a gamble. And you saw the blood in the bathroom. Akino hissed to not yell. Kaneko is hurting, maybe even dying in her own mind. Someone obviously helped her here, but we have no idea if they healed her mind at all. That part you're wrong about, Rias said with a sigh, forcing herself to remain calm. Partially at least. Akino raised an uncertain brow. How so? Akino, the eldritch are something my parents pounded into my head, specifically how dangerous the outer gods are. And I'm going to be honest, Kaneko was probably brain dead after being that close to the eldritch queen's power, Rias informed, Akino looking alarmed by that. My brother agrees with me. Someone had to have healed Kaneko to be doing as well as she is. Why didn't you tell me that when I offered to ask Issei about this before? Akino asked curiously. Rias's frown deepened. Because it's not a bad idea. We have no way of knowing right now if she's healed as best as she can be or if it's just a patch job, for lack of a better word. I just don't know how Aza will react to us reaching out like this. Akino paused in consideration. I'm not sorry I did it, but I'm sorry I didn't tell you in advance. I should really spank you for that, but your sadomasochism kind of ruins that as a punishment, Rias remarked with an annoyed look. Akino smiled playfully. You know you're always welcome to try, Rias. Rias shook her head at that. I have a better idea. After all, we can't exactly spring this on Kaneko. Akino winced. Right. How should we go about that? She asked in concern. Rias asked with a smirk. Akino rolled her eyes at that. Okay, how should I break it to Kaneko while you're there for emotional support? What's going on with Kaneko? Both she-devils turned to see Rias's knight approaching them. Kiba, Rias greeted with a smile. Sorry, we were just talking about getting Kaneko some help for what happened. Kiba paused at that, tensing just a bit. I don't suppose you just told her that, he asked warily. We're about to tell her now, actually, Akino answered with a furrowed brow. Why? Kiba looked troubled at that. Because I just saw Kaneko running away from this room. Akino inhaled as Rias cursed. Damn it. This was what I was afraid of. Come on, we need to find her before she causes a scene. Meanwhile, Kaneko was running. She was probably running faster than she should be, pretending to be human and all, but she didn't care. She had to hide. She had to get away, get out. Something was coming, something like her, and she couldn't be here for that. She couldn't bear to even think about going back to whatever dark, terrible place her mind had fallen into when the Eldritch Queen sprinkled her wrath upon reality. She could see them now, everywhere. The eyes, the tentacles, the mouths. She was starting to hear them. Dark, terrible, ancient words dripping into her skull, evil truths creeping into her bones. Had to get away, shut them out, make them stop. Make them stop, make them stop, make them stop. UFH. She slammed into something. But she didn't fall. The something was holding her. There was a noise in her ear. Something like the hissing of air from a balloon, but lower and deadly. She turned and saw a face. A deceptively human face, but those eyes were not right. Not right at all. Settle down, Gaktha. The voice drew her to what, or who was holding her. She shivered again as her eyes crept up and put the face to the voice that she wished to have misheard. Issei Hayadu. The one with the Eldritch Queen. He was smiling at her. Hey, Kaneko, right? You okay? She wasn't. He knew she wasn't. Where is she? Kaneko asked with a trembling voice. Before he could answer, she continued. Don't make me come near her. Issei blinked. Who? Aza? Don't worry, she's not here, he assured before glancing around. Well, not the real her. She might have left an illusion around. Kaneko felt her breathing calm, just a bit, enough to actually hear her heart drumming in her ears. She saw where they were now, at the gates to the school. Everyone was ignoring them. Even the gothic purple-haired woman, who felt oddly familiar for someone Kaneko knew she had never met. Hello again, little Chiron, she greeted idly. I see you need another healing session. Another? When had Dash? Madam E? Kaneko whispered slowly. There was a nod and a smile, but Issei looked back in confusion. Madam E? He asked with an eyebrow raised. E nodded in answer. One of my lesser names. Ah, right. Yog mentioned that, I think, Issei recalled idly. Kaneko. She froze and turned around to see Kiba. But it wasn't Kiba, because Kiba didn't have tentacles or scales, or that many mouths and feet. Followed by Rias and Aquino. Each was being followed by one-eyed creatures of smoke that whispered such loud and terrible lies then sounded like truth. They wanted Kaneko's mind to break, they were selling her to the Eldritch, they could get her sister anyway, and more. Looking relieved to see her until they realized who was holding her. They were going to abandon her, run away. Before they raced forth once more. They were going to deity. Gaktha stepped in front of them. Stay where you are, netherworms, she barked without raising her ice-cold voice. The trio stopped and scowled at the sudden threat. And so did Issei. Gaktha, what are you doing? I'm here to protect you, master, Gaktha reminded simply. Yeah, well, stand down, he ordered with a sigh. She did so, but Kaneko could somehow smell her reluctance. And hear the very emotion of amusement radiating from the silent Madame E. Sorry about that, she's a bit overprotective, Issei apologized weakly. Thanks. But, do you mind letting Kaneko go now? Rias asked tensely, looking pointedly at Issei's loose hold on the white-haired girl. I will, as soon as she releases this death grip on my shirt, Issei answered, glancing down. Kaneko did as well, absently noting she was indeed grabbing his shirt, at the sides near the pockets. Steady, agonizingly, she unclasped them, and someone gasped because she was bleeding over herself and him. Shit, Issei said under his breath, knowing that wasn't his blood, as he looked to the trio. Should we get a doctor or is that okay for devils? She won't die, but it's definitely not okay, Rias answered in a concerned, almost maternal tone. She reached down and pulled Kaneko into a gentle hug. I'm so sorry we scared you like that. Kaneko nodded, almost entirely absent from what was said, but she knew Rias and the others would never try to harm her. It was her own head that was in all the wrong pieces. She's been around Azathoth again, hasn't she? Kaneko refused to look, refused to move as Madame Yi's voice drifted into her ears. Don't worry, little Chiron, I won't let you shatter again. The group had moved to the occult research clubhouse, Yidra keeping a gentle, yet constant hold on Kaneko. The Nico Devil appeared almost robotic in her movement, reacting very little to anything as she was guided inside. What exactly is she doing to her? Rias asked in concern, watching as Yidra sat on the couch, both hands on either side of Kaneko's head. Haven't the faintest idea, Issei answered honestly, glancing at Kiba with a raised eyebrow. Kiba shifted under his gaze. Yes? Sorry, is every popular person in this school a devil? Issei asked curiously. Any other situation, Rias might have smiled at that, even laughed. And she had to actively try not to as she turned to face Issei. I don't believe we've ever formally met, Rias started diplomatically. I'm Rias Gremory, heiress of the Duke of Gremory. Nice to finally meet you, Issei said with a nervous, friendly smile. I'm Issei. Of the Eldritch, I guess. You guess? Rias repeated in surprise. I was an ordinary pervert just a while ago. I'm still getting used to any of this being real, Issei admitted with an awkward chuckle as he scratched the back of his head. And, well, I never asked if I got any formal titles to share. Rias and Kiba shared curious looks but were interrupted as Akino entered the room with a small cart of food and drinks, with Gaktha trailing behind her. Master, she didn't poison them, Gaktha informed bluntly. Rias's brow furrowed at that. You thought she would? No, please ignore her, Issei said, waving it off with a sigh. She's just really overprotective. You can command me to leave, Master, if I displease you, Gaktha informed without inflection. Yeah, no. I'm almost positive Aza is watching in the back of her head to know if you're ever more than 30 feet from me, Issei remarked knowingly. Mistress only wants to protect you, Master, Gaktha reminded simply. I know, Issei said knowingly. Rias shifted uneasily as the topic of the Eldritch Queen was brought up so casually by Issei. So, veggies, sweets, and meat, he mused while looking at the cart. She said to get as much food as I could, Akino said, nodding to the Eldritch tending to Kaneko. Who is she, though? Another servant of the Eldritch Queen? Rias asked with a raised eyebrow. Oh, right, I never introduced her, Issei realized with a facepalm. Sorry, I'm an idiot. Rias Gremory, that's Yidra the Dream Witch. Yidra glanced briefly at her name being uttered before returning to her work. Rias froze at that. The Dream Witch, she repeated slowly. You brought the Dream Witch here, just like that? Yeah, Issei answered with a shrug. I take it she's important? Akino guessed. She's an outer god, with the largest cult on earth, Rias said, glancing uneasily at the goddess with a bit of sweat forming on her brow. Ah, I see, Akino said, keeping her smile fixed on even if one of her hands shook a bit. Issei frowned at their reactions. Sorry. Master has no need to apologize to these specks of dust, Gaktha said in what sounded like an attempt at reassurance. Yeah, well, I want to, Issei retorted as he turned to Rias. Look, I wasn't trying to scare you or anything with her. I just asked her because she's supposedly the best for this kind of thing. And she probably wouldn't cause a scene. Rias and Akino blinked at the apology. No, thank you for the help and that consideration, Rias assured. I've just never been around Eldritch before, let alone their gods. Well, I've never been around devils. So, learning experience? Issei offered. Well, I shouldn't keep her waiting, Akino said, a bit calmer now as she pushed the cart forward. She stopped at the table and gave a small bow to their divine guest. I just grabbed everything that we had made in the refrigerator, but I hope this is enough for you, lady? She hesitated, knowing the name, but knowing she shouldn't say it. Madame is fine, if you wish to avoid my name, Yidra offered, not looking away from her patient. And the food is not for me. It is for little Chiron. She has not been eating well. She will turn ravenous soon. I understand, Akino said with a nod, bowing again, more deeply. Thank you for coming in person to help her, Madame E. Yidra glanced at her. Again. I'm sorry? Akino asked, not sure what to make of that. This is the second time I've treated her, Yidra answered absently. I did it before to clean up for our sultana. I do it now because her beloved asked it of me. Akino remained silent at that, processing some of the implications she was hearing. Then you have my thanks as well, for the first time. Put your thanks towards him, if you must put them anywhere, Yidra remarked, humming in sympathy. I didn't expect that this little one would come close to the sultana again when I first helped her. Akino's eyebrow rose in surprise. Is that why she hasn't been getting better? Her mind is like armor, broken under strain. I welded it back together, but it had no time to set and cool properly, Yidra elaborated. I told her she would have been fine in a month. That would have been true. I'll have to remember that more Eldritch are lurking about now when I fix broken psyches. Akino nodded. Is there anything else we can do to help, Madame E? I will need Gremory to come closer, Yidra answered, glancing at the redhead in question. The kitten needs an anchor. Her mistress will work best. Meanwhile. So, the Eldritch have come to Earth. Valley Lucifer stood alone amongst the city nightscape, atop a large construction crane. Well, mostly alone. It is rather unexpected, Albion remarked. It is rare for them to come to Earth. Those that haven't already been here for eons, at least. And even they largely keep to themselves. I'd probably assume they were weak if not for all the warnings, Valley mused. So, this queen of theirs. She's? Great Red is the dragon of dreams. None know from where he hails, but I assume he was born of her dreams, Albion answered grimly. To all knowledge, she is the highest in all the cosmos. Valley gazed up at the moon and smirked. You know me well enough to understand that only entices me more. And I know downplaying her would be foolish and fruitless, Albion stated. But she is beyond you, Valley. You cannot hope to even withstand an existence like that before you have the power to challenge Great Red. Don't worry. I wouldn't challenge the Red Dragon God Emperor now. I'll wait until the time is right to test myself against this great blind god you're so afraid of, Valley assured idly. That may be sooner than you think. Valley raised an eyebrow, looking over the path of the crane, and saw a shrouded figure standing there. So, you finally showed yourself. The figure hummed and stepped forward. The shadows evaporated to reveal a disturbingly normal-looking teenager, a boy with black hair. Sorry, I had to be sure you would be a fit for us, he remarked idly. You are eldritch, but not one of the gods, Albion observed suspiciously. Call me Max, the newcomer responded with an interesting smirk. Not my real name, obviously, but that's for the best. I'm part of a group that shares certain ambitions that you have as well. You're plotting to overthrow the eldritch gods, aren't you? Valley predicted in amusement. You pick up fast, Max mused. Yes. We've grown tired of their way of doing things. We? Albion repeated. My group. You could call us eldritch demigods, I suppose, Max answered with a sigh. 1-to-1, our seniors would tear us apart, even the elder gods. But as a group, our power will one day scratch the plateau of the outer gods. And you want me to help, Valis summarized, smirking slightly. Not interested. Max was a tad surprised by the casual dismissal. Mind explaining why? I don't just want to take down Great Red, I want to surpass him, Valley elaborated. Being part of a group that relies on the power of numbers isn't my style. Max scowled, the wind changing about him. That's rather disappointing. Don't bother, Albion warned. A battle here will only draw attention to yourself and your cause. Max let out a breath before stilling his form. We will speak again, I believe. Before you call, mind if I ask what you call yourselves? Valley asked with a head tilt. Max glanced back, his form dissolving into dust as he gave his answer. The Eldrititans. Meanwhile, Issei's mind had drifted to less proper places. That was a given with him in the same room and talking to two of the hottest girls in school, that was a given. That said, he had to admit, the sight of Rias holding Kaneko in a tender embrace was downright sweet and wholesome. This bunch definitely had some makeshift family thing going on. She's a very troubled one, Ydra mused, scowling. Gremory, do you forbid her from letting her tail and ears display themselves? Rias blinked, pulling back from the embrace. Just a bit, because Kaneko was holding her with an iron grip. No, of course not. In public, yes, but we allow our wings out in private if we want. I see. So, it is just her, Ydra remarked with something between annoyance and disappointment. Her hands briefly glowed, Kaneko's cat ears and tail plopping out, the latter swishing idly. Okay, well, this just evolved from wholesome to adorable, Issei remarked with a chuckle. Gremory, I'd recommend releasing her, Ydra informed flatly. She requires food. Rias raised a brow but obliged the goddess. Ydra's hand stopped glowing and the fingertips had barely left Kaneko's head before the Nico Devil had leaped from the redhead's arms, and onto the cart, grabbing for any and all food she could with truly animalistic nature to her. Okay, wow, Issei remarked in shock at the display, as were the others in the room. She will eat, fall into a slumber, and awake within 24 hours, Ydra informed as she stood from the couch. She will be tired and weary for weeks, but the hallucinations and nightmares shouldn't be an issue. I take it that it won't be an issue to make sure she keeps her limbs unhidden in the near future? What do you mean? Rias asked in surprise. Ydra gave her an unamused look. Not much goes on Earth without me knowing, Gremory. Least of all supernatural factions retreating to their native realms. Wait, what? Issei asked in surprise, looking at the devils in the room. You're all leaving? Rias sighed as she tried to ignore the bestial Kaneko messily eating. Yes, we are. We'll be leaving in a few days. Why? What happened? Issei asked in confusion. He groaned at the meaningful silence. Is this because Ozza's in the school now? My family is worried about us being so close to her. Sona's too, Rias remarked, glancing at Kaneko. Not without reason. It's an understandable move, Ydra said reasonably. If that is all, I will take my leave. Thank you again, Madame E, Rias said gratefully. I will tell to you as I did your servant, give your thanks to him, Yidra remarked, turning to Issei. Is there more you need of me, Kungur? No, but thanks all the same, Yidra. I owe you one, Issei said with a smile. Yidra might have smiled at that as she turned and left the clubhouse. Gaktha, you can head out for now. I'll be there in a second, Issei said with a frown. Gaktha trailed her eyes over all the devils in the room ominously before nodding, slowly. As you desire, master. Issei waited awkwardly until she left. Yeah, sorry about her. That's the first time I've seen her around people much. Rias waved off the apology, hand on her hip. It's nothing. You helped heal a precious member of my peerage. If anything, I'm in your debt. On that note, may I ask what Akino offered you? Huh? Oh, she didn't, Issei answered with a shrug. She just told me about what happened with Kaneko and I decided to help. Just out of the goodness of your heart? Rias asked skeptically. More like I felt partly to blame, but also yes? Issei answered uncertainly. Look, I know my reputation and everything. And, to be fair, I would jump at the chance to see your boobs. There were amused looks at his blunt honesty. But I'm not an asshole. I'm not going to make your trade giving me a peek to help Kaneko, Issei explained. Everyone stopped as a small thump echoed in the room, causing them all to turn and see Kaneko collapse on the floor, already snoozing away with food still on her face and clothes. Someone needs a bath, Akino remarked idly. Issei sighed as he watched Kiba and Akino move to pick Kaneko up. Besides, it seems you all have enough on your plate because of me and the Eldritch. Rias was at a loss for words for a second. Pervert or not, Issei's altruism was a surprise, and a reassuring one. I should probably be going, Issei mused. I get that you're all leaving to, wait, is it actually hell? That's what they call it, Rias informed with a smile. Yeah, well, even if you're heading back home, I hope we get to meet again, Rias. I'm sure we will, Issei, Rias said gratefully, sticking out her hand. Issei smiled and shook it. With that, he left. Well, that's taken care of, Drake remarked when they exited the building. You've been awfully quiet? Issei asked idly, lifting his hand to raise an eyebrow at it. I think my presence would have only added to the tension, Drake answered. You are interested in those too, aren't you? They've appeared in a lot of my wet dreams before yes, Issei admitted with a tired chuckle. Not like they'll be around for long. I wouldn't worry. Devils live almost forever, and you'll live longer than that. Your paths will cross again, Drake assured. Issei grumbled to himself. Hopefully under better circumstances, he looked around the area outside of school. He wasn't surprised that Yidra was already gone. Gaktha was probably lurking nearby. Oi, I still haven't gotten used to not being a virgin, let alone all this. I didn't even think Azza might make people pack up and run. Fleeing before an outer god is an appropriate response, though often futile, Drake said. I guess, Issei said before yawning. Geez, training and all this really took it out of me. I did warn you, Drake reminded with a boastful laugh. Regardless, you handled that situation well. You think so? Issei asked with a smile. Of course. The supernaturals might become more at ease when they learn that the king of the Eldritch had the dream witch herself come down and repair the mind of the random devil, Drake offered. Oh, come on. I'm hardly the king of the Eldritch. I'm just banging the queen, Issei refuted. Allow me to repeat, you had one of the most powerful beings in the universe take time out of her day to heal someone, just because you wanted her to help someone, Drake rephrased. Issei stopped and blinked. Yeah, I'm an idiot. I had no idea how that looked from the outside. It looked strange but benevolent. The best most hope from the Eldritch, Drake mused. Is there a particular reason you're not owning the title of being the Eldritch King? Because I can't even really wrap my head around what that means beyond dating the Queen of the Universe, Issei admitted. Fair enough, Drake relented. Meanwhile, Azza took a deep, calming breath. She probably shortened the lifespan of a couple stars doing it, but oh well. I guess Issei met Yidra, Azza mused out loud as she stood on, well, herself. Her true self, the mass of mouths and tentacles floating through space. What did you think she was going to do, kill him? Yog asked idly, reclining on the empty vacuum like it was a chair. Because we both know you don't care if he banged her. Azza stared with a pout at Yog. Don't think I don't know you were involved in this. I was a middledritch in all this, Yog dismissed. Issei asked who could help, and I told him the best option. You told him the most amusing option, Azza refuted before sighing. But you're right, there's no reason to be worked up. I just worry about him. If something happened to him, I don't know how long it'd take him to reform. And he'll be so miserable, having to get used to the eldritch perspective of time without a body. Yog blinked. That is, a fair point, actually, she mused as she twirled her sword. He also met Rias Gremory. Oh, yeah, that devil girl. Isn't she the little sister of their leader, or something like that? Azza inquired, largely without interest. Yes, her brother is one of the 4 Satans. He's actually a super devil, Yog informed. Is that a thing now? Azza asked, her head tilting. As did her real form. Along with this chunk of the galaxy. Indeed. He can definitely take on some of the great old ones, Yog informed, running her finger on the edge of her blade. Maybe even make a few of our weaker peers take him seriously. Azza hummed at that. Is that so? Interesting. Still, I'm not surprised. Well, I am surprised. That you haven't finished this yet, Yog said, glancing up above them. There, in the vastness of space, was a great swarm of icterine annelidans, with sightless eyes and maws crowned with teeth, the smallest, no bigger than mortal children. The largest, those few were greater than most mountains. Like locusts they circled, like vultures they dove upon the prey within their flock. An eldritch god, a gargantuan of crustaceous flesh in a form long and pillared, a one-eyed head roaring at the engorged pests that dared to strike at a divinity. Waves of unearthly power rolled from the armored back of the assaulted god, striking out at the tubular foes. But too few fell, and those that lived gorged on the power of the attacks. Just giving Gabageg a chance to retain his dignity, Azza remarked with a sigh as she rolled her shoulders. Her true self raised many great tentacles as she glared at the battle happening before her. Her scowl deepened. Across the limbs of gnarled flesh, mouths ripped open and screeched into the vacuum. The numberless horde looked down in fright as her concealment fell away. They fled in terror from the screams as they ripped through the emptiness of space, but only the smallest were tiny enough and quick enough to escape her great ire. Those that didn't, were torn asunder and their great bodies withered into shrill statues of their corpses. Void worms. They're normally not that bold, Azza remarked idly, glancing at the great old one she had rescued. Hello, Gabageg. Great Sultana, Gabageg greeted gratefully, reclining his cyclopean gaze deeply as his injuried form floated before the massive visage that was Azathoth. Thank you for your aid. I did not expect to meet ones of that size. Or that cleverness, Yog remarked, waving to the lesser god. Hello, Gobo. Mighty Sothoth? I didn't notice you in such an avatar, Gabageg remarked curiously. Enough about that. Tell me, how were you caught so unawares by these void worms, Gabageg? Azza asked sternly. Forgive me. Mortals of some wretched world attempted to summon me to destroy it, but they botched the ritual, Gabageg explained with his own annoyance. I found myself here, some midpoint in the universe between them and where I was. And the Void Riles felt ambitious, especially with ones that large amongst them, Yog mused, glancing around at the mountainous corpses. We really need to deal with them for good. They'll only get more annoying. You're not wrong, but it's not easy when they can hide from even you, Azza reminded before looking thoughtful. They normally don't come out this way though. They usually hide more at the edges of the universe. Yes, that is strange, Yog agreed with a hum. Apologizes, my queen, but is there anything else? I need to find some place to break off this shell and regrow it, Gabageg requested, his blood still trickling into space. Yes, that is all. I hope you have safe travels, Gabageg, Azza said with a smile. As do I, Gabageg agreed in exhaustion before floating off. They'll be laughing at him for the next epoch, Yog predicted with a chuckle, blinking as Azza sighed. As in, all of her countless mouths sighed with enough power to snuff out a star. Something wrong? Yog asked Curio. Oh, you miss your Kungur? Yog teased with a smirk. Yog, you know your time warping doesn't affect my memories, Azza stated blankly. Yog winced. Sorry, force of habit. Still, need to get another hit of his unholy rod? Yes, I do, Azza answered, blunt and honest, before grinning widely. Oh, I'm so happy he chose to be an outer god. You knew? Yog asked curiously. Of course I did. I'm ascending him, Azza pointed out before grinning. But this means, even in our true forms, I can be the little spoon someday. Yog tilted her head. I forget, what does that phrase mean again? Is that you just wanting him to, well, manhandle your true form? A veritable earthquake happened across Azathoth's form as she shivered in delight. And no. But also, yes. And I need to get back to Earth, now. See you at school, sweetheart. Issei paused, folding his hands together and pointing in front of him. Okay, so let me get this straight, that's not Aza? Walking down the street was someone that did appear to be Aza, waving back at him as she walked on, but Issei could tell there was something off? Wrong? It didn't feel like Aza. Some buzz or spark about her was missing. Along with the sensation of otherworldly limbs just behind the thin veil of reality. But it definitely looked like her human body, and he had gotten very familiar with said body. Indeed, Gaktha confirmed. It is a distortion of reality, filling in the perceived role of her human persona in her absence. She is aware of all it does, as it is an extension of her will. And her human form isn't? Issei countered curiously. The macabre eldritch paused in consideration. That is a conscious effort, this is subconscious. Ah, so this is Aza literally on autopilot, Issei mused. Don't suppose I'll be able to do that anytime soon? I am not aware, Master. I know little of how your ascension operates, Gaktha informed. Right. Where is she going, anyway? Issei asked, watching the not Aza curiously. We just passed my house, so not there? She will disappear once all humans that know of her mortal identity cease watching her, Gaktha elaborated. Ah, Issei said with a nod. Master, you still are considered human by this power, Gaktha clarified. Issei suddenly stopped, looking very sheepish. Right, should have picked up on that. So, guess you'll be heading off to do whatever you do when you're not watching me? Gaktha nodded before tilting her head. Master, could you please hold out your arms? Issei blinked but did as she requested. Like this? Yes, now please brace yourself, Gaktha said before vanishing into mist and shadows. Wait, wow. Issei exclaimed as something suddenly fell into his grasp. Someone, rather. My hero, Aza greeted teasingly, kissing him on the cheek, her arms wrapped around his neck. Aza? Did you just drop out of the sky? Issei exclaimed in surprise. Yes, I did, Aza answered with a giggle. Okay, fair enough, but a little warning next time? Issei requested, unable to resist smiling at her. Aza tilted her head at him. That's what Gaktha is for. And she was horrible with the warning, Issei mused with a chuckle. Miss me? Every instance, Aza said, snuggling into his chest. Did you miss me? Issei grinned, holding her close. Oh hell yes, but I've been keeping myself busy. I've heard, Aza acknowledged before smirking against his body, stronger than when she left. And I can feel it. You've been training. A bit, but come on, you don't have to stroke my ego all the time, Issei said, grinning widely. Aza leaned up to his ear and whispered. What should I stroke then? Issei stiffened, in more ways than one. Aza let out a laugh as Issei suddenly turned and started walking, herself still carried in his arms. Issei, where are you going? She asked in between giggles. My room, Issei answered bluntly, making her turn scarlet, but very excited. Mine time freezing my parents. You know, if Yog hasn't? Not a problem, Bello. Aza stopped mid-sentence as they reached the door. Issei paused, looking at her in concern. What? What happened? Did a star go supernova or something? No, there's someone in your house, Aza informed with a frown, suddenly leaping out of his arms and landing on her feet. And they're not human. That had Issei concerned, forming his red gauntlet on his hand. Without warning, Aza snapped the door open, her powers ready to strike down the intruder that might threaten her beloved's family. Wow! Boss? The seemingly human female greeted in surprise, looking ready to jump off the couch. Bosses, I guess, she said, glancing at Issei. Aza stilled and tilted her head while Issei lowered his fist awkwardly and dispelled the gauntlet. Okay, who are you and why are you in my house? Issei asked curiously. Zathra, Queen, she explained quickly. You know, the hidden devourer? Aza stared uncomprehendingly for a long, tense moment before blinking. Wait. Are you the worm that works for Yidra? Worm? Issei muttered curiously. Yes, Sultana, that is me, Zathra answered, nodding quickly. Sorry, I believe this is the first time we met in person. Oh, okay, Aza said with a nod before frowning. What are you doing in my beloved's home? Zathra held up her hands in surrender. I was expecting Mistress Yidra to be here. They said she had business with the Kungur. She did. That's done, Aza answered flatly, making Zathra uneasy. Issei sighed and placed a hand on Aza's shoulder, her annoyance dispersing as she looked up at him in surprise. It's fine, Aza. It's not like she did anything to my parents, he said before looking at Zathra with a raised eyebrow. Right? Zathra looked vaguely confused. They're not home? Oh, Aza and Issei said in sync. Sorry about that, Issei apologized. But, yeah, Ydra's not coming back here. Actually, sir? I'm here for both of you, Zathra explained to their interest. Lady Ydra had me go see the leader of the fallen angels about what he wanted to give you. Oh, she knew about that? Issei asked curiously. Ydra knows almost everything important that happens on Earth, Aza explained casually. I honestly don't care about the rest of them, but I don't turn down free offerings. So, what is it? Zathra sighed in relief as she held out her hand over the couch. Issei was mildly disgusted by the swarming worms that suddenly came out of every hiding spot in the living room, forming a mass on the furniture. Then, just as quickly as they came, they scurried away and out of sight, hopefully out of existence, and left behind the offering in question. And Issei's disgust was forgotten as he looked at the very cute foreign girl that appeared, lying peacefully on the couch. Blonde, pretty, small, lovely little breasts and a nun outfit of all things. Okay, controlling my perversion for 5 minutes, who and what is that? Issei asked with wide eyes. Is she an angel princess or something? No, Issei, she's human, Aza answered with a head tilt. What's so special about her? She's got one of those things Yahweh made. Apparently, it's great for healing, Zathra answered, shrugging. He thought it'd be helpful for you both, something to heal the Kungur, in case he needs it. As for the girl, well, she's for the Kungur. Issei raised an eyebrow. Aren't both those points to me? No, that's fair, Aza agreed, patting his arm. So, what should we do with her? Phrasing, Issei muttered. Well, we kind of need to talk with her. We do? Aza asked in confusion. What, you just going to mind warp her into being a priestess or something? Issei asked rhetorically. Silence greeted him. Atha, no. Well, it's an option, Aza defended. Yeah, but that's jumping the gun a bit, and I just agreed that mind warping her is an option, Issei said with a facepalm. How do we even wake her up? Oh, that's easy, Aza said as she snapped her fingers. The girl hummed and stirred. What did you do? Issei asked idly. Induced insomnia. That always breaks sleeping spells and curses, Aza explained with a smile. Issei blinked as he thought about that. Can't argue with that logic, he mused. Since I delivered the package, am I okay to leave now? Zathra asked cautiously. Aza nodded, prompting an uncertain wave from Issei. Thanks. That be sometime, I guess? Anytime, Kungur, Zathra managed to grin before heading out the door. The sound of it closing caused their new arrival to abruptly sit up with wide eyes. She looked around owlishly before looking at the couple before her. Ciao, Kisei. Dev sono, she asked in what was not Japanese. So Issei was mildly surprised that he understood her. Hi? I'm Issei and this Aza, he greeted. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to use Japanese, she returned, and Issei was even more surprised by how good her Japanese was. I'm Asia. Asia Argento. I'm in Japan then? Yes you are, Aza answered with a head tilt. What exactly did the Fallen tell you? Asia looked down and thought. It's a bit hazy. But I remember Lord Azazel telling me that Rainier had been using me and gone rogue. And that she was dead. Well, not exactly dead, Aza murmured to herself. Issei chose not to address that. He didn't say what happened exactly, just that she might have nearly started a war, Asia continued. I asked if there was anything I could do to help and dash. Asia stopped and slowly looked back up at the two. What? Something on my face? Issei asked in concern. I don't mean to be rude, but if you don't mind, may I ask, what you both are, she asked nervously. Eldritch gods, Aza answered with a smile. Silence reigned over the room as Issei silently sent a prayer, scolding Aza for her bluntness. Meanwhile, where is that bitch? Fried grunted as he sat in the kitchen that belonged to some devil-summoning sinner. At least it did before he had spilled their brains all over the living room. He had been sleeping in the abandoned church, but it was truly abandoned now. The fallen angels and other exorcists had flown the coop without telling him anything. Why, he didn't know. Probably the devils or someone had raided the place and made them move. But they should have found him by now. Or at least stopped ignoring his attempts to summon Rainier. He needed a damn update on what the plan was. Now he was reduced to killing off sinners to loot their homes for food, money, and the occasional shower. Not the first time he had to live like that. Life as an excommunicated exorcist wasn't pretty some days. Not the blood was plenty pretty. But not his body odor after a week without a way to clean up. Ah, who am I kidding, it's not just her, he said, taking a swig of some alcohol he found in the fridge. Everyone's fucking gone silent. Fallen, ex-exorcists. I swear to God's crusty balls, I'll fucking gut someone if I find out the war started somewhere else and I got left out. Wouldn't it be God's rotting balls? Freed turned and shot at the speaker, aiming right between the bitch's eyes. She raised an unamused brow as the bullet slowed to a crawl. With a sigh, she brandished her sword and gently pushed the bullet aside. Seeing as God is dead and all, she continued idly. Who the fuck are you supposed to be? King Arthur's sisterfuck of a daughter? Freed asked, eyeing the young woman with a cape, European sword, and armor over the lower half of her legs and arms. My name is Yadthatig, she answered solemnly. I'm an elder god. Freed blinked before he let out a mad, high-pitched laugh. Oh, bravo sugar bitch. That's a good one. You're a fucking tentacle space god tossed up in a cute girl's body. Right. Nah, let me guess. You're the one the sinner was summoning, right? Here to show him a good time? Did he tell you to pretend to be some tentacle girl that could fuck his ass? Yad looked less than amused. I can see why she wants you. Oh? Who? The dream witch? The old dreamer in R'lyeh? Freed asked mockingly. Nyarlathotep. Freed froze. The air got cold, and the lights dimmed unnaturally while the shadows began to flicker. Hey, you stupid bitch. You shouldn't say their names. Especially if you know they're real. Freed called out in warning. Nyarlathotep. Something giggled. Freed spun around and shot blindly into the shadows. He looked in every direction, his gunshots echoing far longer than they should. Are you scared, Freed Selzen? Yad asked quietly. Shut your trap, bitch. Are you trying to get us killed? You want that eldritch watching us? Freed shot back as he turned to her. He stopped. A whimpering struggled out of his throat as he looked at Yad and saw what was behind her. She was already watching you, Freed, Yad answered with a head shake. But you're too much trouble to let her have. So? She stepped aside. From a dark corner emerged blue and black smoke. From it, through it, of it came some creature. It was like a hound, but larger. A hound with tentacles for a snout with blue pus dripping from the twisted flesh of its body. It had no eyes, but it could see him. It could see him. The hound of Tindalos, Freed murmured in terror. The attack dog of time. Why you dash? We're telling the truth, yes, Yad finished. This one will take you somewhere far from here, Freed. Some place where even the Black Pharaoh won't try to grab you. Wait. Just fuck wait. Freed demanded as he backed away. I dash. You don't understand. I don't care, Yad mused. I could say sorry, but I can't even bother to pretend for you. Well, fuck you and this dog. Freed yelled as he shot at the hound and made a run for the door. He turned the corner and the dog was there, the long tendrils of its mouth pulling aside to show the horrific maw that lay within. Freed screamed. He screamed as he fell backward and tried to crawl away. No. You can't escape, Yad remarked as she watched without compassion. The hound lives in every angle of time, and he would never stop hunting you. In pure desperation, Freed threw his empty gun at the eldritch beast. It bounced harmlessly off the hound, the gun, unmaking itself into a crude and unrefined chunk of metal, falling to the floor with a thud. No, Freed kept muttering, eyes feeling like they were going to pop out. Get away, stay awaga. The hound snatched onto his arm, more like a serpent than a canine. It reared up, holding the screaming and panicking Freed in its maw. With a gurgling howl, it leaped forward, into the nearest corner and, with a final, terror-filled scream cut off, Freed Selzen vanished from the earth. Yad stood there, saying not a word. Pity, I was going to have fun with that one. Yad turned and stared pointedly at the figure in the darkness. You have plenty more toys. That one would have brought about the ending of this earth if you empowered and unleashed him. My, so certain. Did your bigger self tell you that? Nyarli asked toyingly. I suppose it doesn't matter. Just don't think I'll let you take away all the interesting pawns, dear Yad. Yad frowned as a pair of hands placed a comforting hold on her shoulders. I wonder what Yog would do if you just disappeared for a while? Nyarli mused with a wicked grin in her voice. Nothing you'd enjoy, Yad warned tensely. Maybe not, Nyarli purred before the shadows began to lessen. Until next time, little key. Yad shook her head as she cut her own portal in reality, muttering to herself. Yog, you deal with her next time. Meanwhile, it had taken a little bit to explain everything to Asia. Issei is not yet an eldritch god, but becoming one. And this all started because Rainier tried to kill both of you, not knowing that you are the, well, Eldritch Queen? Asia summarized. And I was given as a sacrifice to make sure you don't retaliate more against the fallen. But she took it all pretty well. That's more or less it, yeah, Issei answered with a shrug. Any questions? I have a few, but Asia trailed off, looking back and forth between them. Why am I still sane? I was always told by the church that the Eldritch destroy a person's sanity. We can rein it in while having a human avatar, Aza answered. Well, I can. Issei only makes me insane for right now. Horrible compliment, but thanks, Issei said, understanding what she meant. Oh. I see, Asia said as she turned solemn. Am I going to be killed as part of a ritual? Aza hummed. That depends on Dash. Atha, no. Just hell no, Issei said flatly. What? I was just going to ask if she wanted to become an eldritch creature. That kind of counts as dying, Aza said with a shrug. I'm sure Shub wouldn't mind. May I ask what happens if I refuse, Your Majesty? Asia asked respectfully. Oh, nothing, Aza answered with a flip of the hand. Asia, right? There is only one thing I want from you. Asia nodded slowly. I want you to help keep my beloved safe, Aza said, waving to Issei. Safe? Me? Asia asked in surprise. But I can't fight or anything. My twilight healing is only good for Dash. Healing, exactly, Aza said with a smile. Which means if something does somehow happen to him, you can make sure he'll be okay. Right here you know, Issei reminded, feeling like she was talking like he wasn't present. Asia blinked. That's all? You don't want me to help you hurt anyone? I don't need help with that, Aza said casually. Asia, Issei is genuinely the most important thing in all the cosmos to me. Issei tried not to blush at that. What was he supposed to do when his girlfriend casually said something so sweet and genuine? And he'll be very upset if his human body is killed, and he'll have to wait so long before he reforms, Aza continued. Well, still sweet and genuine, if not a bit weird to think about. Asia stared into Aza's eyes for a moment before smiling. You truly love him, don't you, Lady Aza? She asked softly. I have since the first time we met, Aza answered with a whimsical smile. Asia nodded. I understand. But may I make one request that might be unwelcome, she asked, cautious yet hopeful. Only one? Issei asked in surprise. I was hoping it was okay, even though you are both eldritch gods, if I continued praying to God? Asia asked gently. Issei swore she looked like a little angel herself. That's fine, Asia, Issei promised, looking to Aza, who had been about to say something. It is, right? Is there some rule that she has to worship an eldritch god now? Aza closed her mouth. No, there's not, she answered, still having a weird look on her face. But Asia looked to the queen in concern. Well, I just don't know why you humans are still worshipping a dead god, Aza said curiously. I mean, eldritch gods come back, but terrestrial gods either pass on to an afterlife or are reborn, so Dash. Wow, Issei said in surprise. God, the god from the Bible, is dead? Yet? Aza answered in bewilderment. Is that not common knowledge? He's been dead for a little while now. Asia just stared for a moment before promptly collapsing, fainting back into unconsciousness. Oh, shit! Issei cursed as he raced over to her. Okay, she just fainted. I think you broke her, Aza. I did? Aza asked in bewilderment. But I didn't even use my powers. Not like that, I mean she's in shock, Issei clarified, giving Aza a frown. Could you have delivered that a bit more delicately? I didn't know she didn't know. Aza defended before looking worried. Are you mad at me? No, just tired of everything going on right now, Issei said with a sigh. I just wanted to go another round with you in bed and snuggle, but then this whole mess starts. Things are happening quicker than I'm used to, Aza admitted. I'm tempted to just blame Yog, Issei mused. Aza, I'm sorry to be a wet blanket after we were about to, Dash. Aza giggled at what he was implying. But you know a way we can hide her without my parents finding out, he asked curiously. Aza tilted her head. We could just send her to one of the cultists, she recommended. Ignoring that they'd probably try to brainwash her, she'd just be waking up in another new place with more strangers, Issei murmured. Aza hummed. I think I have an easy fix. Bring her up to your room. Issei raised an eyebrow and obliged her. They stood in Issei's room as Aza looked around, either taking it in or looking for something. Anything I should do? Issei asked curiously. Hold her tight, Aza advised. I'm about to do some minor reality warping. Issei wasn't sure what was more alarming. How casually she said that or how casually he accepted it. Still, he heeded her words as Aza suddenly stopped. Issei felt a brush of Aza's power washing over them, making Asia shudder and curl into his embrace. He tightened his hold and sighed as she settled. Aza hummed a small tune to herself as she approached Issei's closet. "We're going to hide her in my closet?" Issei asked dubiously. "Nope," Aza said with a wide smile as she opened the closet to reveal, "Welcome to your second bedroom, Issei." Issei gawked as he stepped in to find that the small space had indeed now expanded and formed into an exact copy of the room they were just in, the closet leading into the door. Granted, all of the colors were a shade duller or darker. "This, is safe, right?" "Yep," Aza answered. "I mean, making it could have hurt someone's sanity, but as it is now? Just a few strange dreams here and there, nothing serious or mind-altering. The best part is, if your parents open it, they'll just see your closet." "Okay, I'm going to admit, this is very useful," Issei admitted as he entered the other room, placing Asia down on the bed carefully. Out of pure curiosity, he walked over to the other closet, opening it to reveal his closet, his actual closet. "Were you expecting another room?" Aza asked in amusement. "I wouldn't have been surprised," Issei admitted as they exited the other room. "She can get out of there on her own, right?" "Oh yes, she'll be fine," Aza said as she closed the closet. "So, whguh. Issei found himself silenced as Aza turned sharply, placing her lips on his. "I'm guessing you're still in the mood," he asked with a small grin, placing a hand on her hips. "I'm always in the mood for you, beloved," Aza said with an absolutely hungry look in her eyes. "Anything you want to try, issei," she all but purred with her arms around his neck. Aza inhaled sharply as she found herself off her feet, Issei cupping her ass. Not just to grope her, but to hold her up. With little prompting, she found her legs wrapped around his back. "Thought I might put my new strength to good use," he said smugly. "Ever heard of stand and deliver, Aza?" Aza stared in lust before capturing Issei's mouth again, tongue lashing as she grinded her pelvis against his. Yog sighed as she sat on the roof of Issei's home, spinning her sword in her fingers as she kept Issei's parents temporally looping, driving down the street endlessly while not realizing it. This was the price she paid for letting the meeting with Zothra play out as it had. It was amusing, but if Issei's human parents showed up now and interrupted those two, Azathoth would be pissed. She didn't need to peek into the future to know that. Should have just sent the nun to Ica, Yog mused absently. Dealing with the Asia situation had been an easy but uncomfortable thing for Issei. Just hiding her in his room all the time was, well, it wasn't impossible, but Issei thought it would be a bit on the cruel side to keep her in a glorified cage in the shape of his bedroom. However, despite her initial shock and existential crisis, Asia had been very understanding and compliant with everything, which led to the current conversation. "Do you want to go to school with Issei?" Aza asked curious, sitting on the bed in Asia's room. "School, Lady Aza?" Asia said in surprise, eating a bowl of rice at the desk. "Yeah. That's normal for humans at your stage, right?" Aza asked, tilting her head. "Well, yes. And I would love to, but is that really okay?" Asia asked demurely. "I don't want to be a bother." Aza waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, it's not. We'll have the paperwork warped into existence by tomorrow." Asia smiled, relaxing more as she ate. "Thank you, Lady Aza. I'm grateful, to you and Lord Issei, but it will be nice to go outside." "I understand, staying to such limited dimensions makes me feel cramped as well," Aza mused before blinking. "Oh, right. Didn't Issei say he wanted you to drop calling us Lord and Lady?" "Well, yes, but I didn't want to offend you, Aza," Asia answered with a nervous edge to her voice. "See, that wasn't so hard," Aza said with a smile. "I'm really not that into formal titles. We mainly use them and nicknames so we don't accidentally invoke each other." "Invoke?" Asia repeated. "Do you mean how calling the name of the Eldritch will grab their attention? If someone said your name randomly, you'd look toward them as well," Aza pointed out with a giggle. "But yes. We can say each other's name without invoking each other, but it's an easy slip of the tongue. Kind of like calling someone by accident on those radiophones." Asia soaked that knowledge in politely. "What about Issei? Should I call him something else?" No, that shouldn't be an issue for a while," Aza assured. "Though, getting back on the subject. Do you want to live here, or with Issei?" Asia blinked, twice. "Isn't that the same thing?" "Oh no. If you live with Issei, officially, we have to tell his family and you can use the rest of the house, Aza explained. But we can also just make it so that this room has another door leading outside. You'll have your own address and everything. Asia made a noise in understanding. You mean officially, as in for my papers? Aza nodded eagerly. My papers just keep making anyone who reads them not worry about the address. Though, Issei says I could look into getting something called a P.O. box? Asia nodded absently. I mean, I don't want to be a bother, but won't it be a problem if his parents run into me? Probably not, they still don't know about Aza. Issei's voice came through the door. Can I come in? Of course, Issei, Asia called back, Aza's face lightening up, as it always did whenever Issei entered the area. Were you listening in? Just the last bit, Issei answered as he entered the room, holding out a book. Here, Asia, I got this for you. The nun took the offered item, gasping as she looked it over. A Bible. Wait, this is my Bible. Where did you? Aza sniffed, her entire skin moving unnaturally on her body, as it shuddered independently of the muscles beneath. It smells of the feathered pests, Aza remarked in distaste. Beloved, where were you? Well, Asia said she was in the care of the fallen angels that attacked us, and she was supposed to go to the abandoned church. So I went to check out their hideout, Issei confessed. Do not fret, Queen of the Eldritch. There was no issue, Drake informed. The church is long abandoned. Asia gasped, staring at the green light on Issei's hand. Issei. Your hand just talked. Issei scratched his cheek apologetically. Yeah, sorry, been meaning to introduce you too. Drake, you know Asia. Asia, this is Drake, my sacred gear. Your sacred gear can talk? Asia said in surprise. Of course. I am no mere trinket, for I am Drake, the Red Dragon Emperor, Drake said proudly. Asia looked suitably odd, Aza casually chiming in. He's also helping Issei protect himself until the eldritchification really gets going. Anyway, Issei cut in quickly. Aza, I actually need to ask you something. You didn't send anyone after the fallen angels, did you? Huh? No, why? Aza asked curiously. Well, the place was pretty abandoned. As in, it looked like the fallen left there in a rush, Issei mused. But if wasn't you, well, it still might have been because of you. I'm sorry, I'm not sure I'm following. Asia asked cautiously. Oh, apparently a lot of the supernaturals decided to head back to their home realms while I'm on my extended mortal-themed honeymoon with my dear Issei, Aza said with a smile. So, even though I didn't go after them, they probably ran off anyway. Which brings us to the other issue, Issei murmured, looking at Asia apologetically. Asia, would you mind putting off enrolling in the academy for another week? Asia tilted her head at that. I suppose not, but may I ask why? There are a lot of devils there. Like, a lot, Issei explained awkwardly. And they're all running back to hell within the next day or two. I'm not seeing the problem, Aza said innocently. Which may indeed be part of the problem, Drake remarked quietly. I just don't want to stir things up even more until they leave. I don't think Rias's club would try anything, but I don't know about the student council. Especially since Asia has a sacred gear, Issei explained. Oh, Aza said in understanding. Yeah, the devils might try to steal Asia, and we just got her. I don't mind waiting, Asia assured with an endearing smile before looking suitably embarrassed. May I ask a favor though? Shoot, Issei ranted casually. I don't know much of magic, but is it possible to soundproof your room? Asia asked awkwardly, blushing scarlet. Issei stiffened, blushing as well while looking to Aza, who blinked. Oh, right, she said idly. Knew I forgot something when I was setting up this double room. So, you've been hearing us? Issei inquired vaguely to Asia, who nodded without looking up. We are so sorry. It's quite alright, really. I just, don't want to eavesdrop on your intimate moments, Asia said shyly. Right, humans need to sleep every night for, is it 6 hours or 9? Aza asked curiously to Issei. Issei just cupped his face, trying not to smile too much. Also, Asia started again. I think I'd like to live here, with your family, Issei. If that's alright. Ashu? Oh, yeah, right. Not sure how we're going to figure that all out, Issei mused, glancing at his eldritch girlfriend. Unless Yog will probably have already done it months ago next week, Aza confirmed with a smile. At Asia's confused look, Issei sighed. Time god, he answered as an explanation. Oh, Asia said softly, pausing in consideration. My mind still hurts thinking about it. Yeah, you'll get used to it. I think, Issei reassured half-heartedly. Meanwhile, thank you again for giving us a ride on the Gremmeris train, Rias, Sona said with a sigh. Think nothing of it. We're both in the same boat right now, having to fly home like this, Rias remarked, glancing out the window. Did everything go smoothly? As smoothly as it could, Sona said, rubbing the bridge between her eyes. Which is to say, not at all. I'm sure everyone will wonder where the student council and some of the most popular students in school suddenly vanished too. I would have done this more carefully in a less extreme situation, a member of my peerage leaving school every month or two. Rias nodded in understanding. At least the students will have some explanation. All the humans we make contracts with will just be wondering why we no longer answer their summons. Amazing how meaningless that all feels with what's going on, Sona remarked with a frown. How is Kaneko? Better. A lot better now, Rias confirmed with a smile. Leaving her ears and tail out helps a lot. Was that on the advice of Issei Hayadu? Sona asked knowingly, silence being her answer. I don't spy on you, Rias, but when keeping an eye out for things, it's hard not to notice him entering your clubhouse. Rias sighed. We requested help with Kaneko's condition. No strings, no conditions. And almost no sense, Sona said with narrowed eyes. You know very well that meeting with him was dangerous, just by, whatever his relationship with the Eldritch Queen is. Are you going to tell my brother? My parents? Rias asked pointedly, giving her friend a hard stare. Sona raised a brow. Are you going to keep it a secret? Rias held her gaze for a moment before looking forward again. I don't know, honestly. Sona studied her, curious and concerned. What's your read on him, and his company? Rias glanced up. He was kind. Sona stared for a moment. Issei, the pervert, and all you have to say about him is kind? Rias shrugged. There isn't much else to say. Yes, he's a pervert, and I'm sure he gladly would have taken a feel of us if we offered, she mused. But, Sona, he knew he had something over us. That he could ask me for almost anything to help Kaneko. And yet, he did it for free. He actually said he felt responsible, in a way. Sona bilinkit. That is honestly the best news you could have given me, Sona remarked curiously, getting a questioning look. I'm not sure how much sway he has over the demon Sultana, but if he cares that much, perhaps he'll be able to keep her from doing anything horrible to the world. Maybe, Rias mused with a small smile. Sona watched that smile closely but was robbed of the chance of inquiring about it, as the train suddenly came to a stop, causing them both to jerk in their seats. Whoa! Rias exclaimed, holding herself steady against the seat. Was that the emergency brake? Sona asked, fixing her glasses back into position as she glanced outside at the purple void. We're still not in the underworld yet. That might have been Gasper, actually, Rias said in concern. If he got too scared, he might have frozen the train. Both noble devils made their way to the neighboring train cart, opening the door to find nothing. Rias's and Sona's eyes both dilated as they looked at a solid wall of pure, empty blackness. They backed away, their magics flaring on instinct as they sensed something approaching. From the nothing came dark hands in the shape of two massive wings, the feathers an oily, sickly black. Into the train cart they came, revealing a body of a woman. Hair like a shadow, feathers forming makeshift clothes to cover her like a skirt and top. But they were not clothes, for each tip of every feather was stabbed into the body, gentle trails of blood cascading down her form, the rivers moving unnaturally to accent her voluptuous form. Her feet were like a bird's, every talon cracked or broken, and the pupils of her eyes so wide no color could be seen. And around her neck, a heavy collar of ominous metal. Sisters of the Satans, she spoke, her voice as if a lonely, sad breeze. My mistress, the great she, bestows upon you a gift for your return home. Sona narrowed her eyes. I don't suppose we might respectfully refuse? No, you may not, the harpy said, raising her wings high. But you may resist. It will please the great she if you do. Rias forced a smirk. That much, we can oblige, she said, sending forth a blast of her ruinous powers. Meanwhile, Gact, be real with me, are you going easy on me? Issei asked curiously as he climbed up the tree. Gaktha tilted her head. I am attempting to conceal myself as well as this form would allow, master. Which says so much and so little, Issei noted with a sigh. He made an effort to train some a little every day, even if it was something as minor as the eldritch version of hide and seek, which was the same as regular hide and seek, except it involved trying to find someone cloaked by reality-warping magic. It said a lot about his state of mind with how minor of a difference that felt. Should I hide again, master? Gaktha offered idly. Issei nodded absently. Yeah, I dash. Issei. Issei blinked, hand reaching to his head without any conscious effort on his part. Master? Gaktha inquired, the sliver of concern in her voice almost as good be a full exclamation from someone else. Issei remained silent, a frown forming on his face. I just got the feeling that someone asked me for help. Gaktha blinked, something she didn't do often. I believe you are hearing a prayer, master. Strange. Mistress doesn't believe you'd be able to for many more years. Guess I'm an early bloomer, Issei mused with a smile while looking at her. Any advice on how to respond? I am not a god, master, I do not have the slightest clue, Gaktha admitted. Fair, I guess, Issei decided. Issei, please. Why does that sound familiar? Issei muttered to himself. He nearly fell out of a tree as a port suddenly sliced open next to him, Yog sticking her head out. Issei. Good to see you as always, Yog greeted casually. Small emergency. Do you mind coming with me? It's about the new voice in your head. Okay. Issei answered uncertainly. What's going on? Hop in and we'll explain everything, Yog requested, sinking back into her portal. Issei turned to Gaktha. Is it just me, or did her smile seem a bit forced? The eldritch servant nodded. The emergency might not be so small, master. And given that this is Yog, that can't be good, Issei muttered as Gaktha took her place at his side. Rolling his neck, he hefted himself to his feet before jumping into the portal, Gaktha following after. Okay, Yog, what's the, hey, I know this place. Indeed, Issei recognized the room as one in the Occult Research Club. In it, he found not only Yog and Aza waiting for him, but a blindfolded Aika talking with a curious Asia. Aika. Were you the one praying to me? Issei asked in confusion. Aika turned to him and tilted her blindfolded head at him. What, right now, Lord Issei? 'Cause I did a couple of nights ago, but nothing today, she answered in confusion. You don't know what's going on either, eh? Issei asked idly. Lord Issei, with respect, I don't ask when my gods summon me, Aika answered with a small smirk. Sorry, no, Asia answered with an apologetic smile. Right, so are we waiting on someone else? Issei inquired, glancing at Aza and Yog. Not anymore. Issei hummed, turning to see a short woman in medieval attire, complete with a sword. And you would be? Issei, this is Yadthatig, Yog introduced with a smile. Let's say she's my elder god counterpart. Elder? So, what, a weaker time god? Issei guessed, Yad's face shifting minutely at that. No offense. I do not take offense with facts, my liege, Yad said with a nod. My status, however, allows me to better handle more minute situations than Yog. So, she's the butcher and you're the surgeon? Issei quipped, offering a half-hearted grin. Yad almost smiled. I appreciate the attempt at levity, but we have a matter to deal with, she said, turning to face the outer gods. Beloved, an eldritch attacked the devils on their trip home, Aza explained with a frown. Issei inhaled, his mind flashing to his peers he had seen just days ago. What? Why? What happened? Happening, Yog corrected, holding up her sword in a reverse grip, the handle pointed towards the roof. A glow formed on the edge, projecting a magic orb above it, showing. Is that a flying train? Issei asked curiously. The supernaturals are fond of many modern technologies, Yog answered with a shrug. This dimensional train belongs to Rias Gremmaris family and was being used to take the devils to the underworld. The image shifted to show two black orbs had formed around the train, stopping it in its tracks. Aza spoke up again, eyes on Issei rather than the viewing orb. While they are all still on the train, they are very obviously under attack. Okay, so what now? Issei asked, a bit alarmed. Can't you just call them off, Aza? That's the problem, Yad said as she stepped forward. These orbs temporarily make the spaces within their own separate realities. Breaking it would be child's play for an outer god, let alone our queen. The problem is that if we do, we'll probably kill everyone inside in the process, Yog explained sheepishly. Yeah, but, you're Yog. Can't you just rewind time, or slow it down for them while you work? Issei suggested in bewilderment. Yog glanced away now. Not this time, no. The eldritch god powering this isn't just resistant, she's immune to my powers. Issei blinked at that, glancing at the black orbs again with an intense look. With a frown, he turned his look to Aza. It's her, isn't it? Nyarlathotep, yes, Aza answered with a sigh, causing Aika to shiver at the mention of that name. She's not in there, but she is definitely behind this. So, what now? Issei asked, completely at a loss. Why did you want me here, exactly? An eldritch servant would be able to worm into those realities without bursting them. Gaktha should be able to deal with whatever is in there, Yog supplied, waving to Azathoth as priestess. And you didn't want me alone, right? Issei asked with a frown at Aza. Aza blinked at Issei's displeasure. No, Issei, I would have simply come to you for that. I just thought you wanted to be informed since you tried to help them before. Oh, Issei said, his minor annoyance evaporating. I appreciate that, I do. But, why are Asia and Aika here as well? That, we don't know, Yog admitted, looking at Yad. She brought them here. I assumed that Asia's healing might be needed. Yad glanced between Yog and Issei for a moment before answering. While the crawling chaos obscures Yog's far-sighted gaze, it doesn't block my nearsighted as much, to a point. Meaning? Aza asked with a head tilt. I know what the king is planning, Yad answered, glancing at the lover of Azathoth. Issei saw where this was going and took a breath. Aza, Yog, could I slip in there as well? What? Aza asked in alarm, the force of her yell inverting the colors of the room. Oh, you little... Yog muttered, reversing the effect and casting an even glare at Yad before addressing Issei's question. Okay, yes, you could. But you shouldn't, you're dash. Not ready. Aza cut in swiftly. You're far from ready. You've gotten stronger, and Dreg might be able to make you even stronger, but you're still not strong enough to just jump into a fight with Eldritch that might actually try to kill you. It was a testament that Aza's rant was entirely alarmed and worried, not at all mad or condescending. However, it was very concerning that the nearby table seemed to be twisting in actual pain. Asia watched it uneasily, Aika more curious as the furniture grew rough scales, an eye above each of the legs. It garbled, it shifted, but it didn't move away from its current position. Issei paid it only enough attention to make sure that it wasn't going to attack the two humans in the room. Aza, I love you and I appreciate how worried you are. But even if I'm going to get my ass kicked, I am going to try to protect them. Aza opened her mouth before stopping, a strange look of nostalgia coming over her eyes before sighing in resignation. I see. I suppose you wouldn't be able to forgive me if I tried to teleport you to some other planet to keep you safe, would you? Aza asked half-heartedly. Not easily, no, Issei said with a small smile. Aza, please. Like you said, the worst that happens is I die, and I have to wait around for a new body. And everything faded to dust while everyone he ever knew died as eons stretch on. He tried not to think about that, it'd just distract him. Aza took a deep breath and nodded. Fine. And I understand why Yad brought them here. Well, Asia is for healing, obviously, Issei reasoned. What is Aika here for? The cultist leaned forward in intense curiosity. We need her to pray to you while you're in there, Aza answered honestly. Because they are separate realities, it's possible that you might reappear somewhere else after they pop. Like in outer space, in another galaxy. Issei inhaled at that. Don't worry, you're immune to, well, the various reasons a human would die in space, Yog assured idly. But Aika's prayers should form something of a guiding line home for you to sense. You know, so you can bring the devils back safely. Issei sighed, mentally preparing himself for this. Right, yeah. Kind of the whole point of this. So, what now? In response, Yad turned her European sword, slicing a rectangular shape into the air. A dark corridor-shaped portal formed, looking as if to draw in and drain all color around it. You'll impact with the barrier through here. You may struggle some, but getting through should ultimately not be an issue, she explained, looking to Issei for a moment. I already have the passage of time in this room, you may take some time to ready yourself, my liege. Aza took a deep breath before marching over to Gaktha, placing both hands on her servant's shoulders. Gakt Horshafts, if anything horrible happens to my beloved, I will tear you apart, she warned, her tone more urgent than warning, teeth forming along her fingers. My mistress, I would sooner dismember myself and offer up the limbs to you than allow my master to come to harm, Gaktha vowed solemnly. Issei sweat dropped at the exchange, not sure what to even say to that as he glanced at Yog. Any advice, he asked curiously. Against Nyrli? No, even she doesn't always know what she's going to do, Yog informed with a shrug. Whatever is in there isn't too powerful. Certainly not a god. Some pet Nyrli sicked on them for fun no doubt. Kill it, or them, and the barrier should break. Got it, Issei said, trying to fight off the nervous feeling in his gut. Issei, Asia spoke up, looking at him with a searching gaze. Perhaps I shouldn't pry, but I just wanted to ask. Why do you want to help them? Are they your friends? Issei shook his head at that. No, I barely know them really. But I'd feel like an ass if all I did was stand back and not do anything if I could. Besides, I'm apparently the king of the Eldritch. So, it kind of feels like I'm supposed to help clean up this mess. Asia smiled, her gaze touched and understanding. Please be safe, Issei. I don't think Lady Aza will take it well if you're too hurt. No, I will not, Aza said as she walked up to them. Aza, Issei started, only to be interrupted by her pulling him into a deep kiss, both of them closing their eyes at the rather passionate moment. The other Eldritch didn't react to the display, while Asia blushed and glanced away and Aika made a brief praying motion toward the divine pair. You don't need to explain yourself to me, Issei. If this is your will, so be it, Aza assured, leaning her head against his shoulder. Just come back so you can take me to bed and forget that I was ever worried about you. Issei grinned, hugging her tightly. Deal. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like, subscribe, share and support the original writer. See you in the next video?